Over 20 years ago, Alex Jones created the media platform called InfoWars, and in the decades since, it's grown into a truly remarkable institution with over 200 radio affiliates, tens of millions of unique website visitors monthly, and a 24/7 live news TV channel broadcasting from state-of-the-art studios in Austin, Texas. InfoWars has become the most trusted independent news source in the country, dedicated to delivering breaking news, live coverage of special events, and exclusive reports you won't find anywhere else. While the old guard media struggles to maintain supremacy in a landscape rocked by innovation and technology, InfoWars has been at the forefront of the information revolution. From 8 million radio listeners, over 2 million YouTube subscribers, or the billions of views of our online content, InfoWars proves dominant in every facet of media we enter. For the hardest-hitting reports, uncompromising analysis, for high-profile interviews and bombshell revelations, accept no substitutes. Demand truth. Demand InfoWars. InfoWars. Tomorrow's news today.
Breaking news alert. There's almost no coverage of this, even though it came out an hour ago in the Chicago Tribune. Trump pardons ranchers, the Hammonds, in case that inspired 2016 occupation of National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon. Amazing. Trump's also set to go to England, where the Islamist mayor Sadiq Khan has openly been calling for Trump to be blocked from the country. Simply amazing. Meanwhile, with the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, we witness ABC News and others calling him a extreme candidate, calling the controversial candidate before his name had even been announced. Women's March also has been mocked for calling Supreme Court nominee XX an extremist in pre-written statement. So they just said whoever it was, they're extreme. Quite frankly, if anything, Kavanaugh is a mainline Bushite-type conservative who Trump sees as safe to get in. And I trust the president so much, and he hasn't proven us wrong yet, that even though I don't like the connection to Karl Rove, I don't like the connection to Never Trumpers, the man does have a pretty good conservative voting record as a jurist. And getting to see him up on the stage last night, he seemed pretty genuine, and he and Trump seem to have good chemistry, and that's a lot of what Trump works with as well. So we'll see what happens. Barrett, I think, would have been better for so many reasons. More conservative, more Christian, at least in her actions, demonized for that. And you've got Feinstein saying the dogma of Christianity is strong in you. The dark side is strong with you. So channeling Yoda, it's an amazing time to be alive, obviously. We're going to be looking at the Hammond case. For those that forget, there's a thing called controlled burns. And everybody does it from upstate New York to Georgia to Florida to New Mexico to Texas to Illinois to Oregon. And the Forest Service under Obama started saying you got to get permits for those, and then they wouldn't issue them. And so these brothers did some controlled burns right on their property line as a fire break, because the Park Service is famous for not clearing that out now. And then there's a fire, it builds up super heat and comes onto your land. And a little bit of it, like a half acre or something, in the controlled burn, burns some forest bottom area, burns some grass. And they put them in prison for it and called it arson. So anybody that's lived in Texas, every year after the summer's over, the Mexicans burn their fields to put nitrogen back into it. It's what every culture's done for thousands of years. And there's a lot of smoke in the sky sometimes. Sometimes it makes you cough. Sometimes, makes the sunsets incredibly beautiful. Are we going to arrest all the Mexicans for doing it? It's what you do. But beyond that, it's a fire break. So Trump has pardoned ranchers who arrest led to armed occupation of wildlife refuge. He has not pardoned the Bundys yet, but they've been winning their court cases, but have been through living hell. And obviously got set up by some informants and others, but that has just been a real nightmare. And we saw journalists like Pete Santilli, who I don't think broke any laws, being thrown in prison for years and then finally being able to get out. It's been a bad situation. And then to have paramilitary there with the FBI shoot an unarmed man, Mr. Finnegan, it's been quite the devilish fiasco and could have sparked a new Waco-type siege. But thank God that got de-escalated, and Trump's trying to get the Forest Service and the Park Service, the BLM, really is what we're talking about, to stop acting like Soviet thugs. So that's all coming up today, plus the big Brexit fight heating up as Theresa May tries to betray the voters of the UK. It is a big broadcast. Infowars.com, newswars.com. Tomorrow's News Today. We'll be right back on the other side of this quick break. Please spread all the live links and more. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live broadcasting worldwide. I am your host, Alex Jones, and Trump has just pardoned the Hammond brothers, the foresters and cattle ranchers in Oregon, who did a controlled, legal, and lawful burn right along their property line with the U.S. Forest Service, quote, property. And because a small amount of land burned, a little bit of grass and undercover foliage under the trees, they were sentenced to a long prison sentence, sparking the outrage and the standoff that then developed. I think it's a very, very good move. You could argue that a pardon of the Bundys would only spark more people to have armed confrontations, but you cannot argue that this was a very good pardon. That said, I think the Bundys should be pardoned because the feds came and took their land. They took their cattle to starve them to death and then lied to the media and says it wasn't their land because the public didn't understand surface rights versus who has the actual title to it. But when you're there since 1877 and you have the grazing rights, those are the rights, and you just can't take them. There were hundreds of families there. Now there is one family there. We don't need more people run off the land in this UN rewilding program of UNESCO. George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992 signed us on to that thing. Put our schools, our immigration program, our land use, everything under the UN. And people would say, oh, the crazy conspiracy theorists, they say we're under the UN. Because we were. Remember what Trump did last year. He said the UN no longer runs our refugee program. We're going to decide who comes in via ICE and via the Constitution. And I'm recapturing the power the president has under the Constitution. And, of course, the Supreme Court unanimously, years later, said he was right. Because the president has that power. It's in the Constitution. A 5-year-old could read that and understand it. How had it been transferred to the UN? The UN would say who can come in. The UN would vet the people. And, of course, they weren't vetting them. Who runs the refugee program in Europe? The UN. If an international unelected body can tell you who you take in and how your borders are operating, you are under global government. And they will use those third world populations as weapons. So I bring that up to remind folks that the UN with the EU, as we speak, is telling Europe that they are bringing in the United Nations. The EU is bringing in the United Nations to establish, quote, refugee centers. Those are invasion centers. And the EU is now creating a navy to block Italy from blocking George Soros chartered ships coming in out of Africa daily with thousands. Well, guess what? That just made Italy start to vote to leave the EU. Oh, but here's the problem. There's a permanent bureaucracy. And just as Italy never voted to enter the unelected EU, and just as the UK never voted to do it, even though they voted for Brexit 2 years ago, Theresa May, and that's coming up, a Paul Joseph Watson report at the bottom of the hour, tried to sign a deal unilaterally putting them back in the EU. But see, people say, well, if we vote to leave or we vote to get out of these criminal programs, why they just keep coming back. But then people are awake. And instead of denying we're under the UN and denying we're under world government, when you get a real president or you get a real party like UKIP and you get real movements in Europe pointing out that no one ever voted to enter this and the EU bureaucracy is permanent And the parliament is ceremonial? And then the EU bureaucrats, all 100-something thousand of them, voted to give themselves diplomatic immunity a decade ago and tax exemption from the EU-wide raft of taxes like VAT and others. I mean, you can't float that and get away with it. What have I said thousands of times? If you expose the authoritarian nature of the global government, EU, UN, IMF, World Bank, Global Combine, set up by the Rockefellers just 70 years ago, if you look at it, it's totally, flagrantly illegal. It's flagrantly tyrannical. It's just naked. It's prima facie. On its face, it is total corporate world government by stealth. And you ask, well, how do we defeat that? Because they've got all the money. They swindled it all, of course. And every tech owner, like Bezos and all of them, Cook, all of them, worth hundreds of billions apiece, control trillions, are the most ruthless monsters with slave factories and forced abortions and the daycare at Foxconn in China. People chain their kids up and they crap on the street. I'm not kidding. Look it up. No environmental standards, no nothing. And then they put more standards on us than anybody else so that we can't operate. And Trump's like, we're not doing this anymore. And here's the other breaking news. The Hill is reporting lawmakers target Chinese security companies over spy fears. Congress is now investigating the fact that most major Chinese companies are run by members of Chinese intelligence, that our major universities have openly been taken over by them, that they've done the Office of Personnel Management hack, that Obama gave them all the codes. The realization that we've been totally infiltrated by the Red Chinese military and that they brag about it and that they have put bases all over the world under the guise of factories and mines, and that they are intending to cut the U.S. off economically and militarily, and that our own so-called elites 100% took China from when they didn't have running water in 99% of the country, and people wiped their rear ends with their hands, and let Mao kill 80-something million people to get them in line, take them in, line them up as slaves, and then total Western investment to leverage out the planet. China was wood-burning stoves and no toilet paper 60 years ago. Now it's got more roads, more industry than the United States has. We have been totally rooked, screwed over, absolutely, militarily, through economics, destroyed. Look at the headline right here. It's on DrudgeReport.com. It's also up on Infowars.com. And it deals with new record trade deficit with China. Trump is just trying to put a tourniquet on our leg that's been chopped off at the knee. For 50 years, the blood's been spraying out, and finally it was just kind of barely coming out. Really almost no need for a tourniquet, except we're doing blood transfusions right now. That's what Trump's doing. He's got the country off life support, blood transfusions, trying to get us to eat our first meal, trying to get some color back in our skin, and trying to get us up and positive and realizing we're in a fight. Because they use our open, free society, traitors in our own government, multinational banks, to bring the United States down at the end of World War II. They said, the U.S. dominates the planet. It's got half the wealth. It's got everything. It's promoting freedom worldwide. We can't have that. Let's promote a form of corporate communism, and let's prop China up in a big master plan to do it. And so all of you Antifa people already are Maoist. Go to their meetings. They know it. All you Democrats, though, that hate Trump and hate America and hate Infowars.com and hate Newswars.com, you're just complete fools. All we're trying to do is go back to what works and what's successful and what's honorable. We're going to have the latest on the new Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's pardon, so much more coming up, the left panicking and freaking out and rioting and attacking people all over the place, foaming at the mouth viciously, just saying they're going to surround the Capitol and stop Kavanaugh being approved. I mean, it's an amazing time. But America is fighting back for its life and starting to win, praise God. And the old establishment left is crapping their britches right now. They don't know what to do. America. And the West is fighting for its life. And we're starting to win. That's right, you ought to be changing. But they're not changing, and they haven't been right yet. Where does communism or socialism work? Nowhere. Except for a tiny 1/10 of 1% that always gets total power. So I'm going to just keep on walking with the truth and with history on my side. All over you tyrants. Get used to it. A prime example of that, which is some really good unintentional humor, Pelosi. Dems must win midterms to preserve civilization. As everyone runs from blue cities and blue states all over the world. I know it's a red-blue dichotomy the media came up with decades ago for their map boards during elections, but if you look globally and call, it's kind of upside-down world, but call free market countries red and socialist or communist countries blue, even though communist color's red, everyone's running from the blue towards the red, aren't they? But then the left always tells you they are civilization. There's always propaganda about spaceships and science and everything, but they can't do anything. They can't get their act together. And as the economy comes roaring back, they now admit they're trying to sabotage it to stop Trump. So I'm going to go over some of the amazing economic numbers here in just a moment, but also look at the poison lining to this if we don't long-term and even in the midterm fix things. But this is Trump walking all over them with Brett Kavanaugh. Here he is making the announcement last night.
Tonight, it is my honor and privilege to announce that I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court. Judge Kavanaugh has impeccable credentials, unsurpassed qualifications, and a proven commitment to equal justice under the law. The Supreme Court is entrusted with the safeguard of the crown jewel of our republic, the Constitution of the United States. The rule of law is our nation's proud heritage. It is the cornerstone of our freedom. It is what guarantees equal justice. And the Senate now has the chance to protect this glorious heritage by sending Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court.
People are asking me what I think of this. I'm usually right, and a lot of insiders thought that Kavanaugh was out because of Rand Paul and because of the Bush connections, but his voting record's actually pretty conservative, and Trump likes him, and Trump knows other people that know him, and he is well-suited to probably win confirmation. The problem is, and I'm going to get into this right now, the Democrats have announced their plan. It hasn't gotten a lot of traction yet, but they've announced their plan to try to block him. And their argument is, we're going to block everybody because Trump is under investigation. And so, therefore, it's a conflict of interest if he puts a Supreme Court justice in who might then sit over judgment of him. Well, by that extension, he couldn't have the last guy either. If you know about separation of powers, that's how you balance this out. No, the president does get his Supreme Court nominees. He does get to pick them. He does get to put them forward. And then when they get in, They will sit in judgment. That's how it works. You just can't have the legislative over the executive or the executive over the legislative or the judicial over it's separate but equal clause. And it's very, very clear. But now they're playing this game. Politico has an article out. What Trump's Supreme Court pick means for the Russia probe. And you've got these different congressmen, different senators like Cory Booker saying President Trump is currently a subject of an ongoing criminal investigation. And any nomination of a Supreme Court justice while the investigation continues is unacceptable because of the clear conflicts. You just can't have anybody now, see, trying to sell that idea of interest, inherent in the president installing someone. No, they're approved by Congress, who could be deciding vote on the number of potential issues from the investigation that could come before the court, Senator Cory Booker said in a statement opposing Kavanaugh's nomination. Now, where's the inherent fraud there? Because it's Supreme Court justices appointed by Democrats that sit over Democrats. That's how the separation of powers works, so one group doesn't get full control and overthrow the whole system, which is what the Democrats have been trying to do for decades. And globalism is a world system to overturn nation states, period. They're the traitors that hate America. They hate flyover country. They hate the bitter clingers. They hate the Second Amendment. They hate the Christians. They've declared their hatred of this country. They've declared their hatred of this country's economy. They are the clear and present danger. They're the enemy. And if anything, Kavanaugh's association with the Republican establishment means he might not be trustworthy for Trump. But Trump has done nothing. He's our president. He could go sign any deal he wanted with Russia because he's the president. Then, if Congress thought it was bad and thought it had political support of the people, they could impeach him for it. But he can do whatever he wants. There's no prior restraint. That's why putting the president in is very important and a sacred duty when you're the big global empire. But see, the globalists have had us build the empire, and now they wanted to remove America from the equation, controlling the empire. So Trump's going to meet Theresa May coming up here in just a few days. That's going to be a circus. He's going to be meeting with Putin. And Trump has found his sea legs. He's winning on every front. And the globalists are panicking and don't know what to do. And it's a beautiful time to be alive right now. But when we come back, I'm going to play some more of these clips. I've got Paul Watson's report on the attempts to keep the UK in the EU with no vote. In fact, countermanding another vote. But what I'm saying about Trump is this. The will of the people are behind him. And so when he made the joke, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and my supporters would still support me, he gets the fact that he's going to deliver to us, we're going to deliver to him. And that's why I'm so behind the president, because we're taking the country and the world back, and the globalists are crapping their pants, and things are turning around, so praise God's all I got to say. Doesn't mean things are perfect, but in my gut, I know Trump's good as well. Here's why I'm so pro-Trump. Here's why I endorsed him for president early on. Because I can smell fate. I can see future paths that I want to follow, that I want my family to be part of. That's what a leader is. Now, the globalists hate Trump. They hate nationalist movements. They hate free market because they've already gotten control of the planet's wealth, and they don't want you to have any wealth because they want total power over you. Total control. And Trump has been deftly guiding this country back from the brink. And when you look at how the communist Chinese, even in the Washington Post, they admit, have taken over America's top 50 public schools with just billions coming in and directly setting up endowments, taking control. And our government stood by and let them do it because it was part of a master plan. Oh, here's the Panama Canal. Here's all the major deep water ports. Here's all our missile secrets. And then they put their Army officers and their Air Force officers and their Navy officers into the schools. I've been doing it for decades, to be students, and then they end up being the heads of the schools, the heads of the science programs. And it's in the Hill newspaper today that Congress is having hearings on this. Lawmakers target Chinese security companies over spy fears. We have been sold out. This was the next world war. This was the global corporate war to bring down Europe, bring down the United Kingdom using the EU. This is the stealth program. And it's admitted, and it's diabolical, and it's insane, but it happened. And so all of you that hate Trump and hate America, while you've never been to China, you've never been to Venezuela, you've never studied it, you have no idea what I'm even talking about, you just hate Trump because he's a Nazi. Because late night TV said so 500 times. And what you've got is a bunch of spoiled, rotten, brainwashed, sniveling trendies who have this whole birthright right in front of them, and they want to just crap it away because in some feeble area of their mind, they think they're on this big international, global, intellectual team because their high school teachers and their college professors patted them on the head and said, you're good. Look, Hollywood and mainstream media and the Chi-Coms and the unelected EU and the Islamicist mayors, they all said, oh, you're so smart. Let's launch a big, fat Trump baby balloon and then have the media report on it 10 million times and celebrate it in some stupid ritual. When that baby with the clothespin diaper on just beat your whole global system, rallying humanity, and the West is coming back, and that's all you've got to offer, that won't bother Trump. He loves going to the correspondents' dinner before he got elected president, having them call him a loser and saying you'll never be president and you're a piece of garbage. Because Trump knew he who laughs last wins. Because he has an internal compass, just like I do, and just like our listeners do, where we're not governed by peer pressure. We're not governed by the winds of propaganda. We're governed by our inner rudder, our compass. And it's what drives us, what we know is right, what we know is true, integrity. And by the way, with integrity comes incredible wealth, incredible success, incredible power. The problem is, you ever experienced family or neighbors that don't really have a job, but boy, they sure want to tell you how to run your life. They sure want to tell you what to do with your car. They sure want to tell you how you should live because they don't have a life. They want to run your life. And they think calling us names, lying about us, pouring coffee on us, yelling and screaming at us does something. Yes, it does something. It lets me know I'm right about how immature and stupid and thuggish and mob mentality you people are. And it means nothing to me what you do and what you say. When I was in Seattle, they'd always run by and call me a Nazi or call me a name. So I'd wave them over and say, tell me what you have to say. Tell me your intellectual ideas. And their answer would be to throw coffee on me and run away. And even when I offered the goblin, as we call him, $10,000 and first-class tickets to come here, he wouldn't do it. When we upped it to $20,000, it turns out he is an out-of-work, wannabe professional wrestler announcer. It turns out that the goblin cannot and will not debate. and neither can his Brian Stelter-style teeth. It's like he crossed Brian Stelter and Mr. Ed and then threw in Gollum with a genetic chimera, and then out popped this guy. And I'm not trying to be mean. It's just, what is it about minions of this system that make them so horrific to look at? Okay, I got to stop. I really want to play this Brexit report when we come back to the next segment. And we've got Mark Randazzo, one of the top First Amendment lawyers in the country. And he's going to be in studio with us. We also have the gentleman who started the Walk Away movement, who's liberal and gay and lives in New York, who got thrown out of an electronics shop. They said, oh, you're alt-right because you're on Tucker Carlson. Get out of here. I won't sell you the microphone. He's going to be joining us. And then Paul Watson and a lot more. Roger Stone's will be popping in. He wants to, and I want to get his take, comment on the pardon of the Hammonds, who didn't engage in arson, as the BLM lied and said under Obama. They did a controlled burn, something that everybody does who understands that you've got to have fire breaks. And so they call that arson and put them in prison for that. So that is a big deal coming up. Before I go any further, we are going to have some big announcements tomorrow and some new specials. We have something very, 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 very exciting coming out that deals with wound care and disinfecting infections and trying to block that and stop that. That's really revolutionary. We're going to be announcing tomorrow some other things. But the big 4th of July super sale, Second American Revolution sale that we launched last week, this is the last day. This is the last day. The Second American Revolution 4th of July super sale. Big savings at InfoWarsStore.com, and your chance to help fund, again, the Second American Revolution and block Soros and the globalist attacks. Brain Force, the amazing nootropic, 50% off. Find out why people love it and why that's 5-star reviews by the thousands at Power Reviews. Brain Force Plus, 50% off with free shipping. Survival Shield X2, 40% off, free shipping, low stock. Knockout Sleep Aid, 50% off while supplies last. And a lot of these are about to sell out, so it's a good thing that I am ending the special. Real Red Pill Plus, now with energy, free shipping, 50% off, and so much more at InfoWarsStore.com. That's the big umbrella site. InfoWarsLife.com takes you right to the subpage. And you also get 10% off when you sign up for auto ship on things you want to reorder. We have the fluoride-free toothpaste, Super Blue for adults and children. It's all there and a lot more. 50% off on hundreds of items and free shipping. InfoWarsStore.com. Be sure and check it out today. Well, the minions of the establishment, the zombies that follow Hollywood and mainstream media, I guess you call them the suckers, the weak-minded people, are physically attacking people, running people out of stores, rioting, screaming, freaking out all over the country. There's so many reports of it, I can't even keep track of it. A lot of it's up on Infowars.com. Antifa's just beating up anybody that's got a bumper sticker that's Christian on their cars. There's so much of this pouring in. We've got 3 new videos of them just beating up old women. And let me tell you something. I see like 15 young punks beating up a 65, 70-year-old woman, and I'm going to be honest. I just start wanting to kill people. I mean, I just, as a man, I can't watch that stuff because it makes me angry at everybody around me. I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy either, man. How do you come up with grown men beating up old women? I mean, that's why I cannot get around this stuff. This country has produced so much good, but it's also produced a bunch of spoiled, rotten scum that is the lowest filth on the earth. I mean, I would just love to see each one of these punks put in a ring with a patriot. Just stop showing it to me. That's just one of the videos. I can't look at it. But I've seen it myself where they'll target an old dude on crutches or an old lady on a wheelchair. Just like radical Islamists, you see the videos where they'll kick women downstairs and stuff. It's just, they are so dishonorable. They are so cowardly. They are so weak that it's hard to believe that there is scum like this and that it exists. But it does exist. And it is a creation, a dropping of the Nancy Pelosi's, of Hillary, of the San Franciscos, of the Seattles, of Austin. Much of Austin has fallen to it. I'm not evacuated, but my God, it is a product of loathsome evil that must be met head on. But I ask men out there, I mean, if you watch grown men run up and a woman beg them and say free speech, and they smack her in the face, and the police do nothing, of course. There's always these weird little pot-bellied Nelly police in San Francisco with little, that smile when they see it. It's like, what planet did you come from? Because you don't act like people. Now, we're going to Roger Stone right now. I'll get to the Paul Watson, Big Brexit news at the start of the next hour, because I want to get into the pardon and obviously what's behind these things. The president exercising executive power. People haven't been doing that except exercising it for the globalist. Now it's being exercised for America, and I love it. But Clifford Cunningham's written an article. Napolitano says Kavanaugh, heart and soul of the establishment, and that he's disappointed, and that Justice Gorsuch was a good pick and was honorable. And I respect Andrew Napolitano, and of course, one of the best friends of Roger Stone. And I had one of the editors walk in and said, do you want to publish this? And they normally only ask me something if it's something we get sued for, and I might have lawyers review it. But I said, of course, publish it. I like Clifford Cunningham. He works for us. And I said, I want to hear what Napolitano has to say. We're going to show both sides. We're not in a cult here. But here is my view, and then we'll go to Roger Stone. If Trump can co-opt the establishment, then I'm all for it. We want them to surrender. And one way to do that is to bring them in and then see if they'll be honorable. If not, you throw them overboard. And that's what Trump does. With the Supreme Court pick, though, this guy will be there 30, 40 years. He's pretty young. You can't do that. And so that's why it's a big deal. So the left doesn't want him. They're going to oppose anybody saying the president's under investigation, so conflict of interest, totally unconstitutional to say that. It's just made up, but that's going to be their big push when they surround the Capitol and, they're calling for civil insurrection. But I know this. I've seen the president so many times come through that I trust him. And I didn't want Kavanaugh. Roger didn't want him. Senator Paul said he was probably going to vote against him. Now he says he's open, which means there's been some behind-the-scenes discussion. Has Kavanaugh pledged himself to the Republic? Has he explained, hey, I just came up through the system and Harvard and Yale. Okay, I'm a white shoe boy, but I'll probably get confirmed. And he's got a pretty good voting record. He's got a few problems on civil liberties. So that's my view, is that the president isn't God. He can't do everything. He knows a lot of things we don't know. The globalists absolutely hate him. We need to get this confirmation before the midterms in case they steal those, and they're going to try to impeach the president. And they're going to make a big move in the Supreme Court. So I see what the president is doing. Sometimes he's proven right. Sometimes he's proven wrong. Most of the time he's proven right. Roger Stone, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you, Alex. He was not my choice. I'm not saying that he is not a conservative. He is. But at the same time, his deep ties to the establishment and to the Bush family were troubling to me. Whether or not his involvement as a young prosecutor in the Vince Foster case, the Clintons' lawyer who was, died in office, comes up in his confirmations, remains to be seen. The left would have opposed anybody Trump appointed. They had their fill-in-the-blank signs already painted. So they would have been just as
By the way, there's actual video. They had all the signs of all four potentials printed up. And then ABC News beforehand said controversial nominee before it was even announced.
Yeah, so they were locked and loaded regardless of where the president went. Let's see how this goes. The left is also claiming that the president wanted Kavanaugh because he thinks there's going to be a showdown in the Supreme Court over the investigation by Robert Mueller and whether or not the president can be subpoenaed to give a deposition, perhaps even broader issues. I don't know that that's the case, but that is the narrative being spun by the left.
Oh, they're now saying he's not allowed to have any nominees that the previous one that he got in is bad. I mean, of course, it's not in the Constitution. It's not true. There's separate but equal powers. But that is going to be their new push that Senator Booker and others are pushing is that Trump just has to be shut down, his whole agenda, because he's under investigation by their little crackpot, Mueller, who's been totally exposed.
Yeah, it's really kind of extraordinary. Clearly, these people have never read the U.S. Constitution. The president has the authority to make these appointments, and he should do so on a timely basis. You can see that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is holding on to see whether the Democrats win the Senate this November. She's hanging on by a thread. So everything the Democrats say now is colored by their growing hysteria over the popularity and success of the president. The growing economy really has them spooked because it gives the president the upper hand.
And that was my next point, and we'll cover it some when we come back here in a few minutes. Pelosi, Dems must win midterms to preserve civilization, but everyone's running from blue cities, blue states, and socialist and communist countries. Texas is CNBC's top state for business in America this year. The coming labor shortage in America is great for news for workers, with wages rising rapidly without a communist minimum wage, which bankrupts things. Lowest ever Hispanic unemployment ignored by Univision, Telemundo, and it just continues, ladies and gentlemen. Homeowners are sitting on a record amount of cash and not tapping in, and it just continues, ladies and gentlemen. The only areas being hurt are retailers and things because, obviously, we have a situation with Amazon and the rest of it. We're going to go to break here in just a moment with Roger Stone and come back and talk about that, but we can't be too confident because they're planning a lot of nastiness. We'll talk about how they're planning to keep the president from getting this nominee through the approval process in the Senate. And we'll also look at this latest pardon and why he did it, but also the larger strategy of why Trump is engaging in all of these pardons early in his presidency, which really is unprecedented and I think a great idea, but we'll explore all that. Don't forget, today is the last day for the extended July 4th week mega sales. We've got hundreds of items, 50% off. Some we can't do because 50% off would be below what they cost us, like X2. It's 40% off with free shipping. Free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com on any item, whether it's a $9.95 bottle of colloidal silver, normally $19.95, and free shipping. You also get 10% off when you sign up for auto ship on things you're going to want to reorder, like Wake Up America coffee or X2 or Super Blue toothpaste. And it is you funding this operation that's changed the world. So thank you all for shopping at InfoWarsStore.com. And while you're there, get a copy of Roger Stone's newest book, Stone's Rules. Read it, and then donate to the library to reach other people. That's how we win the war, one mind at a time.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May is hanging by a thread after Brexit Secretary David Davis and Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson resigned. So why did they resign? Because Theresa May brazenly betrayed Brexit by proposing a deal with the EU that would de facto keep the UK in the customs union, subjecting us to the same regulatory and legal framework that we voted to leave, and hampering us from doing trade deals with other countries that would provide us with economic independence and prosperity. The very reason why we voted for Brexit in the first place. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I went to vote in the referendum, I didn't see a third option that said leave, sign up to everything under a different name, and be the EU's bitch. To illustrate how... All
right, this critical report is coming up. I just wanted to show you the start of it to, again, encourage everybody to go to Infowars.com, to go to newswars.com and get the video and get it out there, because the fact that they're trying to ignore the vote of the people of the UK to get out of the EU, something that they never voted to do to begin with, is illustrative of how authoritarian it is, just like they're trying to overthrow our elected president. That's the theme here, because that's what they're doing. Going back to Roger Stone, Roger, any other points on Kavanaugh and where you see this going? And then let's shift gears into, as I was just mentioning, the latest pardon.
Yeah, just a final point on Kavanaugh. It's instructive that Kavanaugh was a clerk for Justice Kennedy. So it's conceivable that one of the reasons they were able to get Kennedy to step down was because he would be replaced by one of his clerks. I would point out that Justice Neil Gorsuch was also a clerk to Judge Kennedy. Now, as a Supreme Court justice, even though he is retired, Kennedy gets an office in the Supreme Court. He gets to hang around, and he would have two of his former clerks on the court. Perhaps it was sold to him that way. The big news today, Alex, as you point out, I was headed to Las Vegas this weekend, where I was scheduled to speak to a rally on Sunday to free the Hammonds. The Hammonds are embattled Oregon ranchers who ran afoul of the Office of Land Management and were imprisoned for impossibly long sentences. They have now been pardoned by the president in a blockbuster move. So the rally that I was scheduled to speak to has been canceled, happily. This demonstrates that the president understands how to use the pardon not only to deliver justice for people who deserve it. Dwight Hammond is 79 years old. Stephen Hammond is 49. The evidence against them at trial was exceedingly weak. The judge, the Justice Department demanded a maximum 5-year sentence for them. Wasn't even clear that they were guilty of setting a fire that they were accused of setting. So the president also understands the symbolic nature of these pardons for the West, for the rugged individual West. This is a very clear sign that the president will stand up to the federal machinery that's been grinding these ranchers and farmers, under their boot for many years.
I have been out West, and you talk about jackboot thugs. The way BLM behaves to just the general public, the way they glare at people at the trade stations, the way they act is very imperious, very arrogant, like an occupying army. And they're, for folks that don't know, and let's come back and do a few more minutes on this. This is so critical. Some states like Nevada are 90% federal. There are several others that are 75, 80%, but most of those western states are more than half federal. And now they're always squeezing everybody off the land, working with the UN, working with the Nature Conservancy, working with these groups. And then they take people's farms and stuff, and years later, rich guys come and build a mansion on it. It is very Byzantine. It's very, I would almost call it dark age, what's going on. And there is a war by the corrupt federal government against the West, and Trump has signaled an end to that. We'll be right back with Roger Stone straight ahead. Roger Stone was just getting into the optics, the iconography of President Trump this morning, announcing that he is pardoning 2 members of the Hammond family who had done some controlled burns before that are totally normal on your own land. There was another controlled burn. This goes on all over the country, and they couldn't even prove it was them. They tried to call it arson. Had a kangaroo group put them in jail, sparked a lot of outrage. I mean, you've got illegal aliens killing people every day, stabbing them and shooting them, and they don't even go to jail, or killing an FBI agent, a $280 fine. Meanwhile, a fire that hurts nobody, that burned some grass. You're going to go to jail for 5 years, and then it's almost sparked a huge uprising in the West. Recap what you were saying about how they've been squeezing the West, how under Obama and even Bush and Clinton, they've taken so much more land, how they treat people on their own land, how they try to block roads so you can get to your land. I mean, there's a rewilding going on under UNESCO and the treaty that George Herbert Walker Bush signed.
Well, and the most egregious example of this, of course, was the Bundy family of Nevada. The claim that the Bundys hadn't paid their rent, in essence, to the government is false. They attempted to pay their rent to the county because they believed the land belonged to the state, not the federal government. The government's misconduct in the Bundy case was so egregious, was so outrageous, that the judge threw the case out, and then it was announced last week that they will not be retried. I flew out there for a rally for freedom for the Bundys several months ago, and the energy was quite extraordinary. So the Hammonds are in a very similar situation, sympathetic to the Bundys, but the ranchers and the farmers of the West are tired of these jackbooted thugs who work for the Bureau of Land Management. Where does it say that they get their own police department, their own paramilitary organization? The facts here were clear to the president. He didn't have to pardon the Bundys. All I think he would have In the end, the judge threw out those charges, so a pardon became unnecessary. In this case, he has done the valiant and right thing by pardoning the Hammonds.
And it just shows what heroes the Bundys and others have been. And David Knight was there in the middle of it with our crew. Just an amazing historic event. And then the persecution they went through, then the vindication by the judge. There's something new in the wind out there. People are sick of producers being harassed and targeted and treated like criminals, and then criminals being held up like they're gods. Roger Stone, we were talking, we only have a minute left before I go to this Paul Watson report, about the fact that the White House doesn't deny report Trump made secret deal with Kennedy over retirement replacement. Well, that's think progress. I mean, they just didn't respond to it. But you know, the whole point is if Kennedy's leaving and they end up putting his old law clerk in there, now that would make sense. It's not illegal of how Trump makes deals to get things done.
Think Progress is the single least reliable fake news site anywhere on the internet. Anything they write is false. They cannot be taken seriously in any way. My point earlier was one of simple speculation. I don't know that that happened, but if it did, it would not be illegal. If the president told Justice Kennedy that he would consider his former clerk, Brett Kavanaugh, who everyone agrees is qualified, that would not be in the slightest bit inappropriate. But Chuck Schumer is now openly saying Kavanaugh was appointed to thwart the Mueller investigation. So there we have it. You see the Democratic line of the day.
Well, that's what I came out with this morning. That's one of the headlines is that the Democrats have announced their plan to block all judicial nominations, basically, of the president. If there's any chance that any of the cases against him could ever be heard by any judge he puts in, that's just an insane idea. It's the executive branch. That's what it does. It nominates for the judiciary, and then you have the legislative that then confirms. So they're trying to break the judicial, legislative, executive division of power. They are trying to basically block Trump's entire agenda with this new theory. Everybody should point out, well, it's pretty cockamamie because the last Supreme Court justice that Trump nominated got approved very, very quickly because he's highly respected by both sides. And they didn't even raise that point then. So it just shows that they are grasping at straws. But this is what they're going to use when Michael Moore surrounds the Capitol and when they get their rioters out on the streets. I think within just weeks, Roger, let's talk about that timeline, weeks or months before the midterms, certainly, we're going to see them make their move for destabilization, claiming, oh, he's about to put a judge in on his own criminal case. Stop him, and use legislative, judicial, executive ignorance in the Democratic constituencies, foolish little brains, to create this perception and really have them try to move against the president. Well, clearly, that's the drum that Booker and Schumer and all these people are pushing.
Alex, you're absolutely right. Look, I also think it exposes their game plan. For anybody who thinks that Mueller is not coming after Trump in a bid to remove him, is wrong. And they think this is going to end up in the Congress and in the courts, and therefore they're trying to get there first. The president has a legitimate right to make this appointment, and the Senate will confirm him. But they've exposed their longtime game plan. Despite the fact that Mr. Mueller's probe continues to be exposed as the partisan hit squad that it is, has not lessened in any way his intention to try to take out the duly elected president, Donald Trump.
Roger, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.
Tonight on The War Room, we expose the two British globalists who, working with George Soros, have gotten a stranglehold on America's digital electronic voting machines. Today at The War Room.
This is critical. So much of the information that ends up defeating the globalist originates on InfoWars. That's why the audience, yes, you are the vanguard. You're not just listening to be informed and to also help us be informed and sending us tips and intel. You are the folks that are reaching out to others so that we can report on the hardcore analysis. Then others pick it up later. We end up being proven right, and it ends up changing the world. So 3 o'clock Central today, The War Room. Roger, thank you.
Great to be here.
Speaking of Cory Booker, let's play a clip of that, and then I'll come back with the Watson piece. It is important, but this is just as important. This is Cory Booker, the senator, and then we're going to play a Schumer as well. It's just disgusting. Here it is.
I'm a little sort of stunned at the way this is all played out. If you look at the entire list of 20 or so people that he had on, the one person the president could find on that list that would be most assured to rule in his favor, should many of the things you're describing come before the Supreme Court, is this judge. He picked the one guy who has specifically written that a president, in fact, should not be the subject of a criminal investigation, which the president is right now. So this seems to be, of all the people, the most self-serving person he could choose in order to protect himself from this criminal investigation.
Booker thinks his constituents are idiots, which they are. Do you know how many judges and how many Supreme Court justices have said that you can't have a criminal investigation of the president originate out of the executive? That's why you could never get Bill Clinton. You could only have Congress then move with impeachment. Then once they're stripped, then you can do that. That's why nobody ever tried to charge Richard Nixon. He stepped down, then they didn't go ahead with the criminal charges. But you cannot indict a sitting president and then have the case go forward. Because then every two-bit county or city or anything could sit there and bring down a president all day long. Just like Travis County, the Democrats are constantly indicting Rick Perry and Tom DeLay and everybody. It's unbelievable. He thinks you're so stupid. Imagine being the globalist establishment, and they think they can set up a private, above-the-law, tax-exempt corporate world government owned by a bunch of rich white guys, rich Arabs, and rich Chinese people, basically. Chinese communist. And then they can sit there and everybody else race war with each other and have the media all turn us against each other and then try to get us to reject capitalism and accept socialism and communism that then they administer multinationally. We all live in a system of control where they tell us where to go, where to live, what to eat. Bloomberg says, I want to tell people what to eat. I'm smarter than you. I'm a technocrat, in his own words. Bloomberg has articles about him, about how he's this great technocrat, and he's going to tell you how to live. They are so blind by their arrogance. And then you look at Brexit, that was the first big domino to fall. Now with over 50 countries going towards capitalism, becoming populist countries, it's so exciting. And you've got the EU about to collapse. You've got Brexit. 2 years later, May tried to sell it out and keep them in the EU. And that only makes people more angry and more awake. I remember when we passed Brexit, folks go, oh, well, they'll just ignore it. And I said, that's even better. Because once people know they're getting screwed over, they get angry, they get informed. No one even knew that the EU, I remember I was covering the EU 20 years ago, and people were saying, oh, the EU's not going to take over. The EU's just a trade deal. It's not going to do anything. There's no EU army. There's no, and now it's all here. So everything we talked about is mainstream now. They tried to demonize it. They tried to make fun of it. They tried to say it didn't exist forever. But now we can have a real debate. We won. Their bullying, their intimidation, their attempt to say it's anti-Semitic, to say that the EU's corrupt, doesn't work. Or if you want free market, you're racist. People aren't stupid. They see through that. Except for the dumbest of the dumb who are being organized into zombie armies. Let's go to Paul Joseph Watson's powerful report on what Theresa May has been caught doing just days before Trump travels to the UK.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May is hanging by a thread after Brexit Secretary David Davis and Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson resigned. So why did they resign? Because Theresa May brazenly betrayed Brexit by proposing a deal with the EU that would de facto keep the UK in the customs union, subjecting us to the same regulatory and legal framework that we voted to leave, and hampering us from doing trade deals with other countries that would provide us with economic independence and prosperity. The very reason why we voted for Brexit in the first place. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I went to vote in the referendum, I didn't see a third option that said leave, sign up to everything under a different name, and be the EU's bitch. To illustrate how much of a sellout this was, May ran the plan by Europhile-in-chief Angela Merkel before it was even seen by her own party's MPs. Knowing it was a bad deal, she preempted her own ministers resigning on Friday by telling them they'd be quickly forgotten and revoking access to their government vehicles. And guess who praised the plan? Anna Soubry, Ken Clarke and Vince Cable, three of the biggest Ramonas in Parliament. That tells you everything. As we warned all along, Brexit is being betrayed. Theresa May and her negotiators have cowed and rolled over to the EU at every turn. Her prime negotiator is a Remainer who in his Oxford days was a Soviet fanboy who defended Stalin and implied communism was preferable to capitalism. At this point, they're taking the piss. So what happens next? Well, Boris and Davis have indicated that they resigned not to force Theresa May out, but to force her to revise her disastrous Brexit plan, which, given that she's had 2 years to craft it and has delivered what Boris himself called a giant turd, sounds like a forlorn hope. It's time for Theresa to go. It's time to flush the turd. 15% of Conservative MPs, or 48 of them to be precise, have to write a letter to the 1922 committee triggering a vote of confidence in Theresa May. If she loses, then she's toast. That will trigger a new leadership contest, which hopefully a committed Brexiteer will win. The new leader will then almost certainly feel a need to secure a mandate from the country by calling a new general election. He or she will then have to defeat Labour's Jeremy Corbyn and save the UK from entering a hard-left tyranny ruled by someone who thinks Venezuela's socialist dystopia is a good example to follow. If Corbyn wins, he'll almost certainly derail Brexit or call for a second referendum. If May wins, she'll deliver, at best, a soft Brexit, which is a Brexit in name only, which is no Brexit at all. So it's basically all or nothing. We need a leader who believes in Brexit. For most people, that man is Jacob Rees-Mogg. But JRM is a reluctant leader. He's said numerous times he doesn't want to do it. Could Rees-Mogg be kingmaker? Could it be time for Boris? Since the day after Brexit, I warned that the vote to leave was merely the start of the battle. Don't expect the elite to take this lying down. They'll just make us vote again in another referendum until they get the result they want. These people are snakes. Don't think the battle is won. It's only just beginning. Theresa May is surrounded by establishment globalists who share the very same attitude that sold us out to the EU in the first place. The very backstab that Margaret Thatcher warned us about.
There'd be no European Central Bank accountable to no one, least of all to national parliaments. Because the point of that kind of European Central Bank is no democracy, taking powers away from every single parliament and being able to have a single currency and a monetary policy and an interest rates which takes all political power away from us. As my right honourable friend said in his first speech after the proposal of a single currency is about the politics of Europe. It is about a federal Europe by the back door.
They have no interest whatsoever in delivering Brexit. They have no loyalty to this sovereign nation. So Conservative MPs have a choice to make. Is your loyalty to Theresa May's dreadful political legacy, a legacy that has betrayed 17.4 million people and the very notion of democracy itself, a legacy that has led directly to the UK's soaring violent crime problem, a legacy that has exacerbated the problem of mass uncontrolled immigration, a legacy that has eroded free speech and emboldened cultures hostile to our own? Is your loyalty to that worth more than your loyalty to your country? Is it worth more than your loyalty to the sanctity of democracy? Is your legacy going to be about how you sold out to Brussels, or how at this pivotal moment in UK political history you stood up for Great Britain?
We are forcing them out in the open. We're engaging them. We're in a fight, and we're winning. One of the top First Amendment lawyers in the country, Mark Randazza, is here. He got demonized by the New York Times for taking my case in the whole Sandy Hook matter. But we're not getting into that today. We're getting into the left's crazed attack on free speech and beyond with Mark Randazza straight ahead on the other side. Good to have you here in studio with us.
Good to be here.
We'll be back. Stay with us. Well, Mark Randazza writes a piece for CNN. You see him all over the news. He's recognized as in the top 3 First Amendment lawyers out there. And he represents me in the whole Sandy Hook defamation matter that we're not going to really get into today. But we're going to have 20 questions with him because he can cover the waterfront. He calls himself kind of a classical liberal, not a mainline establishment liberal, not a right-winger, but a classical liberal. I kind of call myself that as well, but all the terms are turned around. But I was asking him about Brett Kavanaugh, his view on him. He's done a deep dive on him on some big issues. You know, his take on Trump, just pragmatically what Trump's doing, and then the state of the crazed left and how he thinks we can counter it. But it's great to have you here with us.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here.
Where do you want to start? Just on the deep dive you did on Kavanaugh?
You know, I first got some calls from the press on what I thought of Kavanaugh when before he was the nominee, just when his name was being floated. And my initial reaction was pretty bad because he made a decision in Abbas versus Foreign Policy Group, LLC, out of the D.C. Circuit, where he took the D.C. anti-SLAPP law and said it didn't apply in federal court, that anti-SLAPP laws had no place in federal court. Now, as somebody who employs anti-SLAPP laws a lot for my defendants, I mean, I was instrumental in getting the Nevada one passed. That really struck me with a negative chord. So my reaction was, this guy's going to be bad for free speech. Then, when he became the nominee, I stayed up all night doing a dive into his First Amendment decisions, and you know, I've really kind of come around a bit. I think he's not going to be bad because in that same Abbas decision, you know, he made a really good statement about reporters asking questions in a case cannot be held liable for defamation because they're simply asking questions. Now, you can ask a question in a way that is quite obviously you're really just saying something defamatory. You know, when did so-and-so stop having sex with goats? You know, that's not a that's
Doesn't
not a
Brian
question.
Stelter look like somebody you wouldn't have babysit your children?
I mean, you could add, yeah, that you could probably get away with. But, you know, saying something that's clearly defamatory and throwing a question mark on the end of it is another story. But if you're doing anything that's reasonably close to journalism, you're going to be okay. There's another decision that he made that I really, really liked where he called Call versus Bureau of National Affairs, where he talked about how the First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press and freedom of speech and how costly and time-consuming litigation can threaten those freedoms. So, like when you have a...
Which is exactly what the Democrats admit they're doing with lawfare against Trump supporters.
Right. So when you do that, when you file a lawsuit, look, you get a lawsuit filed against you, you come into my office. I mean, I immediately tell you, you better kiss a lot of money goodbye because defense is not cheap. You know, if you want a more modestly priced attorney, we can send you to one. But even then, that's still expensive. And that is...
Because losing is even more expensive.
Losing is even more expensive. But, you know, when I was a very, very young lawyer, I got handed a defamation case that I was defending all on my own against a very large law firm. And I was pretty proud of myself when I won. And when I handed this client the decision saying, hey, we won, and he looks at me and says, well, if we won, why is my retirement fund empty? And that really struck me. You know, that's why I've been a proponent of
the SLAPP provisions.
Yeah, because I despise seeing someone go out there and exercise their First Amendment rights, and then somebody decides that they want to take a swipe at them just to punish them for using those rights legitimately. And
aren't you glad you chose at Georgetown, who's also suing me, aren't you glad you chose the First Amendment venue? Because that was big then, but it's really big now.
Alex, I didn't choose it. It chose me. You know, every First Amendment lawyer that I know, this is something that it chooses them. You know, you when you're a kid, every one of us has this story, like we call it our quit hassling me, man moment, when we learn about our constitutional rights, and then I'd say within 24 hours of learning about them, you find that somebody's violating them, and then you stand up for them and you get slapped down again. And you got to recognize that if you really want to protect the First Amendment, you really want to protect your constitutional rights, it's a constant fight. It's stressful. It's pretty easy just to let it go. But there's some of us who won't do that. So I don't do it because I chose it saying, hey, this is going to be a great way to make.
You got pushed around, and so you stood up, and you've had some great success doing it. So going out back to the new nominee Kavanaugh. Yeah, you got a lot of his decisions here. I do. I've got about 6 pages of quotes from him, and whether it comes whether it's commercial speech, whether it's journalism. I'm in general, I'm going to give this guy a B+ coming in. And, a couple days ago, and I admit I was probably a little bit overly negative about him simply because of that one Abbas decision. Because you did the back of the envelope quick analysis, and now you've had a chance to look into it more. Yeah, I mean, I'd go crazy if I had done this kind of a all-night dive on everybody who was on the short list, because, of course, knowing Trump, he could have had 5 or 6 people on that list, and then all of a sudden he pulls somebody out of left field. But yeah, in really looking at this guy, I'm optimistic that his view on the First Amendment is going to be good for the country. Well, that's a good thing, because historically it's been the right-wingers that have been on the wrong side of it. And so how does that juxtapose that the left, I would describe the left uniformly against the First Amendment, uniformly admitting in lawsuits against me, which has flabbergasted you and many lawyers. We're not going to get into the cases themselves, that they say, we want to end the First Amendment, we want to overthrow it, we want to shut it down for everybody but us. They're launching what they've done at the universities as a war outside with actual universities arguing for me to be silenced. Yeah, look, currently the wind is blowing from the cold wind is blowing from the left today. Those of us who actually believe in the First Amendment, that have stand on the same ground that we did 10 years ago. Now we're all being called right-wing. Back then I was being called a libtard. I don't really care one way or the other. I believe in this. This is what I stand to fight. Yes, right now I find the left looking for exceptions, trying to say, I really didn't like Kagan's language a few weeks ago about how the conservative wing was weaponizing the First Amendment. That frankly shouldn't be a pejorative. The First Amendment is a weapon. And the left has gone way past with everybody's a Nazi, and they go past the First Amendment, though. They're calling for violence. They're calling for uprisings. I mean, they've really passed the Rubicon. Look, I don't know that they have gone, I'm a little less pessimistic about it, but yeah, I remember when the first person said it's okay to punch a Nazi. And then, you see. Well, wait till they dump hot coffee on you, because you were talking, I saw it in a bunch of news articles when it came out, you were representing me, because a lot of other lawyers, we already had you to consultant, we're going to be having you involved, but all these other lawyers were scared to sign on the dotted line, and plus it was great, I'd met you, by then you're obviously the best guy for it, but the fact they're now calling you a Nazi and you're getting threats, I mean, that's fine with me. That's but the lie, because you represent porn companies, you represent Nazis, you represent Vermin Supreme, you represent left, right, center. So the idea that you or your client is just intellectually a complete fraud. I mean, they know that a defense lawyer, that a First Amendment lawyer, that it's their job to go out and represent somebody, and then to call you a Nazi because you've represented Nazis is just fraud. Look, I frankly welcome it. Because, you judge a man by his enemies. And the more they're coming at you, the more it means you're doing something right. Look, I read that New York Times hit piece, and I just laughed. And then, of all things, the Huffington Post wrote a follow-up piece where they actually did acknowledge, yeah, I'm proud to represent Vermin Supreme, I represent a political action committee of Muslim feminists. And then at the same time, yeah, I represent the Daily Stormer, because I think if you are a First Amendment lawyer and you pick and choose your clients based on what they have to say, you're not a First Amendment lawyer. Let's be clear. You're a hack. Those Nazi sites, they attack me constantly. They say things about my family that aren't true, particularly Stormfront or whatever. And you know what? They have a right, though. I believe in the First Amendment. I'm a big boy. But the left has said, we get the Nazis first, then we get everybody else. Well, that's the problem, because it is, when you had the whole punch a Nazi meme, and then it's, well, you can punch a Nazi, and then anyone who doesn't disagree with me doesn't agree with me as a Nazi,
Now you just punch anybody who doesn't agree with me.
Yeah, you're a Nazi. Boom, bottle over the head.
Right. I mean, you know, kids wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Well, since when does that, you know, wearing a symbol of a sitting president, whether you like him or not, you know, if you're wearing if somebody who's wearing a...
Since when does it get you whacked over the head? We'll be back. By the way, I had one of the editors walk in here earlier, an article that's on newswars.com. And I'm not criticizing him for this because we try to, you know, check things and go over things. But normally it's something I'm going to get sued for. This is Judge Andrew Napolitano, friend of mine. Respect him. Roger Stone says, you know, basically his best friend. He's a really smart guy. He's been on the list to do it as well. I don't think he's sour grapes. He was very happy with Judge Gorsuch. But he says the heart and soul of the establishment is what this new judge is, Brett Kavanaugh. And so the crew's like, well, we're pro-Trump. Are we going to put this out? I'm like, absolutely. People ask about InfoWars. They go, in fact, even mainstream media goes, you'll see a clip of a New York Times article or a Newsweek, and you'll see one person saying this and another saying that. We're just trying to have a free discussion here. And I like Clifford Cunningham. I respect our writer. And I think this is a really good article, you know, that a lot of people are concerned about this, that he's too establishment Republican. And Judge Napolitano is really respected, you know, and he's got an issue, and Rand Paul's got an issue. All I'm saying is Trump is so pragmatic about everything he's doing for the average little guy and the results of it, because I study all these areas. I was just talking about, you know, meat packing during the break, something my family in the cattle business has been involved in, and I know some big cattle families that are just getting out of the business because there's 3 packing companies, it's all rigged, and then the cattle producers cannot even make a living. They've set it up like that. Well, Trump behind the scenes is looking, I've been told, to try to bust that up. So separating this from Kavanaugh, you were saying doing the deep dive on him and then looking at what Trump's done in his policies, I wouldn't even call him conservative. I'd call him Americana. And I know you as a classical liberal will take heat for this, but you said, no, I want to say on air right now I like Trump. So in your own words, yeah, that's quite a coming out there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't have, you know, I voted for Gary Johnson. But, you know, I'm at this point, I'm not going to say I'm not voting for him in 2020. He has, I think this trade war that he's started, I want to see the outcome of it. I'm not smart enough when it comes to economics. I mean, you asked me a question about the First Amendment, that I know. Economics, I don't. So I could be crazy on this, but I think the outcome of this is going to be good for us. I see him looking at certain economic policies, you know, from almost a Teddy Roosevelt standpoint, more than an establishment standpoint. So, you know, my 401k's never done so well, so I'm also looking at that.
And like you said,
so bad.
He wants to drive down drug prices, not with a socialist answer, but by making them have competition and going, wait, you want to pay for somebody's assisted suicide? And I think if somebody wants to, you know, die, that's fine. I just don't have the government involved. Don't make me pay for it, by the way. But you don't want thousands of drugs and treatments blocked sometimes for 20 years given to someone who's terminal, who chooses to try to save their life. You want me to pay for someone to kill themselves, but I can't let them pay to try to save themselves?
No, when he loosened up the regulations as far as experimental treatment, yeah, I mean, when you see somebody going to Mexico for treatment because they can't try something here because it hasn't been FDA approved, I mean, that's sad. You know, if you're desperate, you're at the end of your rope anyway. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to give that a whirl.
How would you describe Trump? I just think very pragmatic, because he's like, look, I love America, but he goes, I'm all for trade in other countries. He goes, China can't have 30, 40, 50% tariffs. Yeah. And China can't have lower taxes on us than corporate stuff. That's a tariff. You know, one example is 280% tariffs on all our dairy to Canada. He goes, we have 0 on you. He goes, I'm going to start out with 100%. And they flip out. How is it I can punch you in the face 280 times, but then I'm only going to punch back 100, and then I'm the bad guy?
Yeah, I mean, and then when I look at something like that, that seems reasonable. At the same time, I still have to admit where I'm ignorant. And, you know, I took one economics class in 1988, and I got a B in it. So
well, here's the bottom line.
Don't take my word for it.
I've read the CFR. I don't have degrees in all this stuff. I read the boiled down real white papers, not their propaganda in the news. They made the decision in the 50s. The leftist elites did. And they said, America's got half the world's power, half the world's wealth. It's not fair. They were all really socialist and communist and academics. And they said, let's build up China and other countries, and let's have deals with regulations to shut us down, no regulations on them, and let's transfer power to those countries. Now, that was the useful idiot level. The big banks and the big corporations, they just wanted to dominate economically. So China has been set up to take us down. The CFR said the new century's the Chinese century, America's done. And so then they rigged it, Mark, where they would rise and we would fall, and Trump's saying, So it's totally rigged.
It is, but you know, it's when I see the way these regulations have worked to the benefit of large corporations, and you know, we see essentially, I mean, I'm not really sure the nation state is the best way to organize people, but it sure beats an unaccountable corporation, and that's where I see.
Or the Central Committee of the Politburo. The Chinese president is not a president. He has been elected by the Communist Party, 1,000 people. The Politburo selected who could vote. And then they just made him dictator 3 months ago officially. Said, well, now we can never vote to remove you. And your vice president's a dictator.
Well, in general, you know, when we look at the American system, I have similar criticisms because we only have, you know, we say, isn't it terrible they have one-party rule? Well, we have a duopoly. And we have a duopoly that's almost unbreakable. But,
so you're for term limits?
Well, I'm not just for term limits. I'm for breaking up the duopoly. I mean, I think we should do anything we can to break the backs of the Democratic and the Republican.
You know, I used to feel like that.
Why should they trade off power? Every 4 to 8 years, they trade off power one way or the other. And the rest of us are not party hacks. Most of us, you know, join one team or the other.
And as a lawyer, you know how complex they make the party apparatus exactly. And that's what keeps people from doing insurrections within the party.
Sure. I mean,
but Trump just did it. He just took the Republican Party over.
He did. But, you know, why do you think? I mean, I would have loved to see Trump versus Bernie Sanders, because then you have insurgents from both sides. You know, instead, the Democrats put their hack up, and as usually happens, you know, it should have been a.
Have you heard? And I've confirmed it.
Bush,
Hillary is planning to run in 2020.
Well, if that happens, you know, I'm not going to be very popular back in Massachusetts, but I'm voting for Trump then. There's no way I could see that happening. But I have the same objection to her that I have to another Bush going to the White House.
Oh, they're just we don't need royalty in this country.
Exactly. And if it's, you know, if the Republicans don't put up anybody but a Bush, I'll vote for a Trump. If the Democrats want to put up a Clinton again.
But look at her arrogance. The Democratic Party's bankrupt. She's got $1 billion still in her campaign war chest, a couple billion in her foundation. She did that on purpose. She is the Democratic Party. She owns it, and she's so arrogant that she thinks she's going to stay. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I predicted she was going to win, so don't take my predictions to the bank.
I predicted Trump was going to win.
Yeah, I didn't. I woke up on an airplane on the way to Warsaw and said I thought it was the Ambien talking when I read the screen. So I was shocked. But
well, let me tell you a little secret. The military didn't get involved in hacking the election. It wasn't the Russians. It was the military and intelligence agencies blocked Hillary trying to steal some key states. And I mean, Trump's not just doing this on his own.
You know, not my area. You know, my area is the First Amendment. So when it comes,
I'm just saying they've got their whole shadow government. But you know what happens when the shadow government and the deep state rebels? Because see, Trump's like deep state. That's only the top globalist Democrats that are trying to block him. The general deep state are just people in the whole. I mean, you know how countries work. I mean, China's got 100 million people outside its country that are military-age men who are really intelligence operatives in their companies and corporations. Congress is about to have hearings on it. Well, you don't think they're the only ones that do that, right?
Well, of course not. I mean, we've had that blueprint for years.
Yes.
You know, the British Empire did it. The French have it. We have it. You know, in China.
So the left and all you guys need to surrender because it's over. I mean, you're not going to win one. And if you kill Trump, there's backup plans for that. And here's the thing. He did get elected. He actually won in a giant tsunami. But they stole so many votes and so much stuff that he almost lost.
Well, even if you go with the narrative that's actually in the press, I mean, he did it fair and square. You know, that's how the Electoral College works. It's there for a reason, because I don't want to live in a country that's simply New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles making all the decisions.
And that's why we have the separation of powers. That's why we have the Electoral College. That's why we have all that. And you're right. Well, see, you're smarter than you say you are. You're just putting provisos in there.
Look.
What do you want to get into when we come back next hour? Because you're on fire. We got a lot to cover.
You know, I think we were talking about the political violence is probably a good thing to talk about.
We need to go to those videos. Antifa attacking the left, running Fox News reporters out of the Supreme Court. I've been at the Supreme Court across the street. They won't even let you film it. And then meanwhile, they say without a permit. Meanwhile, they just let the left go crazy. So that's all coming up briefly. So I have enough money to pay this guy and all the lawsuits against us. Go buy some products at InfoWarsStore.com. Seriously. We've got Super Blue, fluoride-free toothpaste, fortified with colloidal silver and iodine. People love it. It's concentrated for adults and children. We have the mouthwash with the colloidal silver and iodine as well. Nothing like it for your gums. My gums have never been better. I go to the dentist and they go, you haven't been here in 6 months. There's no buildup. Well, it's designed by a dentist, my dad. So InfoWars store.com, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. Those specials have to end today. The 4th of July specials are ending today. New specials tomorrow, but these are some of the biggest ever. Free shipping, 50% off on almost all items, InfoWarsStore.com, and some incredible new T-shirts there as well. Check those out. We'll be back with hour number 3. All right, next segment's longer, so we'll get into the left's accelerating violence with the top First Amendment lawyer and his horror of it, Mark Randazza. And again, you're like, okay, great. You know, he's a liberal, but a mainline liberal would attack him. He's a classical liberal. It takes a lot of courage. I mean, let me tell you, there are other top lawyers in this country who are, you know, and they are all scared to death. Their law firms won't even let them defend, not just me, but other conservatives and libertarians. There's a real chilling effect going on out there. And that's why if Kavanaugh was a bad guy on the First Amendment, that would be a big problem, and I would oppose his nomination. I just don't want to oppose his nomination and then get something worse. So, you know, in the few minutes we've got in this segment, you've done the deep dive on more of his rulings and statements, and you were critical earlier when you just kind of picked up some mainstream news, but you've actually read a bunch of the rulings last night, and now you're B+.
Well, you know, the case that I knew him about was that Abbas case, where he ruled that the anti-SLAPP laws shouldn't be used in federal court. I think that's a bad thing. I don't think his analysis was correct. He was following an opinion by Alex Kaczynski from the Ninth Circuit, who's his former mentor. And, you know, I can understand following your mentor. I got mentors out there that I will always respect them, even if they're wrong. I also didn't really like that he's a double Yale grad. I mean, I think if there's one
He's a super white shoe boy.
Yeah, if there's one thing I think the Supreme Court really needs, it needs diversity. But I'm not talking about diversity of race or gender, although I think...
Maybe a state judge, maybe a regular trial lawyer.
Well, how about somebody who didn't go to Harvard or Yale? Because there is nothing magical about those institutions, you know, except...
People talk about cabals, who really secretly runs things.
Yeah.
It's Harvard or Yale. It's whether it's Zuckerberg, it's like every damn one of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the smartest lawyers I've ever met, a guy by the name of Bob Kornrevier. He went to Catholic University of America. It's a third-tier school, and the guy will... You know, I mean, he's an idol of mine. So we're not talking about like something magical happens to you in Cambridge or New Haven that makes you somehow smarter. So that I didn't like. I didn't like his decision in Abbas, but you know that's my.
So but back to this. We can expand on this after if we need to. But it's become a mafia. Even people that have gone there and have PhDs from there, like Dr. Boyle we have on, he explains that it's not that they're that good. They've gotten their people all into government, and now they're only incestuously, a form of nepotism, only bringing in their own.
Yeah, it's always, you know, it's always like a relief to me when I see that a judge wasn't necessarily from Harvard, Yale, or Stanford. I mean, there's no reason that we should be picking judges only from those places. Now, there's other schools that are, you know, I don't know why the heck you wasted your money to go there that I wouldn't want to pick people from, but that's a very limited list as well.
Well, you're from Georgetown. It was always respected. That Georgetown's suing me. I mean, a very shameful behavior.
Yeah, look, Georgetown was the first time that I started getting looked at as a conservative when I was like, wait a minute, I'm a pretty left-wing guy from Massachusetts, and I'm not buying into some of their deep political correctness.
We have the guy coming on who started the walk away movement in 30 minutes, and he's a liberal gay guy, and people are throwing him out of businesses, trying to attack him, all because he says, man, the Democrats have become like a cult.
Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, I think it's sort of a natural reaction. Everybody was so shocked when Trump got elected, and you know, the mantra on the Democrat side was, this is going to ruin the country. It's going to create the Fourth Reich. It's going to be the Handmaid's Tale if he gets elected. Well, now what happens if that doesn't happen? Then they're wrong. And you know what? They can't be wrong, so they have to keep this narrative up that it's
the crisis narrative.
And, you know, and like, this is not healthy for us. You know, I see people in families not talking to each other over politics. Are you kidding me?
I have people contacting
your politics.
I have people contacting and basically threatening my family because they're my parents or my wife.
Yeah, it's look, it's crazy. I mean, it really is. There's no need for it, and I think that anybody who starts to see that as a problem for any reason needs to reach across. And like, I hang out with people who don't agree with me at all. I love hanging out.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, you're in a cult. We'll be back with all the leftist violence. Stay with us. Mark Randazza, it's personal family stuff. You don't have to say it if you don't want to, but I was just talking about how they wage wars against our families.
Yeah.
Just because you're a First Amendment lawyer, the stuff that's happened to you. But I talked about taking my daughters to camp 10, 12 days ago to drop them off, and there was InfoWars stickers on trunks and like, you know, 10-year-old girls running up saying we love you, and all of the camp counselor boys, when I pulled up, because they were getting all the trunks and putting them on a trailer to go to different camps, were like, Alex Jones, we love you, taking pictures. But I saw some horrified liberal mothers and they just don't get it. Like, why are the young people ages like 6, 7, 8, 9 up to about 18, which they admit Generation Z is rebelling against SJW garbage?
Of course they do. I mean, that's a natural thing for kids to do. You know, it's like, look, back in the 80s, you know, I was a punk rock kid reacting against Reagan. And
I like punk rock. I mean,
well, conservatives, the new punk rock, man. I mean, that's really what it is right now. You know, you see these kids I look at these kids who are showing up to college in suits and styling themselves as conservatives. I don't care if they're misguided or not. I look at it, I'm glad they're finding a voice, and I'm glad they're not taking what their parents and their professors tell them as gospel, because that's how the marketplace of ideas grows. That's how thought grows, even if they come around. I mean, I admitted right here on air, my initial response to Kavanaugh was negative, and now I'm saying I did a little more research and I realized I think I was wrong. That's just it's a great thing. And when I see kids arguing with their parents over politics, whether it's when I was arguing with my parents saying, "Nah, Reagan's terrible," you know, and you know, and this is just a horrible nationalistic, jingoistic regime. And then I see kids doing the same thing to their SJW parents. That's wonderful. The kids are already.
And of course, your dad, you were saying, is a huge Make America Great Again guy.
My dad is probably one of the biggest Trump supporters that exists. Yes, and that's you know, I'm pretty middle of the road. You know,
and he's doing it though, like in an area like Austin in Massachusetts.
Well, Massachusetts is about as blue as you can get. So, yeah, he drives around with his I support Trump sticker on his car, and he doesn't care what anybody thinks, which, you know, where did I get? Guess that's the chip I got from the old man.
But that's good. I mean, that's especially when they're trying to bully you, then it makes it even more valuable and does make me more aggressive. People come up to me and yell and call me names. Like, what planet are you from? Now, let's get into that since you mentioned it. Yeah. You mentioned over 4th of July, there were hundreds of attacks. The left calls it a new civil war. They call it, you know, this uprising, Michael Moore, all of them are calling for it. Then I point out that they say they're launching it and they make a joke out of it. But let's roll some of that video of the Whataburger with the guy grabbing the Make America Great Again hat, throwing, you know, his iced tea on him. Let's go ahead and roll that audio. Then let's go into what happened in Portland. And then let's go into what happened this weekend in San Francisco. A Christian prayer vigil and grown men, Antifa, beating up women. So let's go ahead while you're talking and roll some of this video.
Well, you know, initially when, you know, we saw the video earlier of Richard Spencer getting punched. Now, I don't approve of that. You know, I don't think it's okay to punch a Nazi. I think when you cross the speech violence divide, you're automatically wrong. But then it was, you know, it had this allure to it. You could look at like, well, I'm just punching Nazis. But then everybody who doesn't agree with you is a Nazi. And now it's this kid with his Make America Great Again hat, you know, getting attacked. And then it just becomes Nazis are people I want to punch. Now, what is the end result of that? It isn't like you can just...
You've just become a Nazi because the Nazis dehumanized groups of people and then went after them.
Well, I mean... My position is nobody's a Nazi except the Nazis. I think even neo-Nazis today in America are not what 1930s.
Yeah, they're not a bunch of disgruntled World War I veterans that were half nerve-gassed and half alive, all crazed following a psychopath.
But I mean, I saw the best way I saw people to shut down Nazis was I saw a video a while back where this kid just followed a Nazi march with a tuba and played this silly, you know, boom, 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 the tuba sound to it. And it made them look so ridiculous. And I looked at it and I thought it was a thing of beauty. They're exercising their First Amendment rights. He's exercising his. And that was really even...
And the guy made a joke out of it.
Right. That was the way. Now you see this kind of stuff and you look at this and you see this violence. I mean, people are really getting hurt, you know, and a lot of people think this just started in Charlottesville. This didn't start in Charlottesville. This started in Berkeley. You know, this started on the streets of D.C. And the
former hearts of supposed free speech.
Right, and what I don't want to see, I see it goes from Richard Spencer to any kid in a MAGA hat, and and next it's you or me.
Well, listen, I told the story since the campaign. I never got it on tape till Seattle. They walk up in a restaurant in front of your family and they knock your drink over, or they throw it on you. Because first it was F you, then it's knock your drink over or throw something at you, and then now it's punch you in the back of the head. I had a guy in Hawaii, not this last time, the time before, big guy, and I was just smart enough not to do it. Walked by, slapped me in the back of the head, and called me a Nazi. Yeah. And so didn't catch it on tape. Never really told the story till now. But this is what's going on, and it's getting bad.
It is, and and here's the problem: is that the natural reaction is to show up with shields and helmets and fight back, and it's hard to tell somebody don't do that. But I think that not reacting the same way, I think the biggest strength that conservatives can have is don't react the same way. And, maybe that means you got to take a punch and turn the other cheek. I mean, I'm not the most Christian guy in the world, but if that's the lesson you have to learn, because...
Well, I was sitting there...
I don't want to see us rise to a level of actual civil war. And right now, when I look at this, and I look at people attacking one another in the streets...
Men attacking women.
Oh, yeah. Look, Antifa, I know you don't like cussing on your show, so I won't say exactly what I think of them, but bring it on.
I tell you what, I'll let you say it, but we'll delay it for TV and radio. Go ahead.
That's all right. No, I won't. But, those guys are a bunch of wusses. I mean, are you kidding? You're going to show up with a mask over your face to attack kids and women because you think that your politics are so damn correct or so damn righteous that gives you the right to cross the violence words divide? Dead wrong.
Well, look at how these guys walk like they're so tough. But meanwhile, anytime a man fights them, they get laid on their ass.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they didn't have a mask over their face.
But I'll tell you, what these are is usually street rat, meth head criminals or rich kids. Because look at him beating up that woman. And so these are guys that are just the scum of the earth. I don't even know how to describe them.
What's really troubling about it is you've seen some local governments almost endorse it.
Oh, Portland, San Francisco.
Yeah, and that is, look, the police are supposed to be there to stop this kind of thing. And, I like to consider myself a neutral observer of this because I'm not about to go out there with shields and bats on either side of this. And I'm certainly not identifying with Antifa. But when I see this happen, whatever, the way I used to see things like this is you'd see the police acting as a barrier so that the Nazis could march.
But that's why they do it. It's done in Seattle. It's done in Portland. It's done in San Francisco. It's done in Austin. Because even in Austin, the police, to a certain extent, they stand down.
Yeah.
They're ordered to do it. And so you got 10-1 leftists beating up a prayer vigil. It's never even Nazis now. Because most of the Nazis are Fed-run, and, provocateur, the leader will be a Fed. The others are idiots. But, you'll have a prayer vigil. Usually it's like Hispanic and black Christians, and a few white people standing up. And then here come people beating them up, calling them Nazis. And it's a prayer vigil. And it's just insane to see the cowardice exactly in these blue cities where they've got everything on their side. And then a bunch of wobbly, big-butted soy boys who came out of their World of Warcraft basements to act like tough guys. In Austin, they come out with guns and pointed them at Owen and said, "You're shaking, aren't you, boy?" And wouldn't let him into a park for an event.
Damn. Yeah, this is
our reporter by himself out there with people saying, "We're going to hurt you," and hitting him with clubs.
Right.
With guns.
And, you can't just say, what are you protecting if you're doing that? Like, what is that? It just horrifies me. And what I'm worried about is, I hear from a lot of conservatives that say, well, we're going to go armed. We're going to go ready to defend ourselves. We're going to go ready to protect ourselves. And it's hard to argue with that logic. But
then they're going to get their Charlottesville event they want.
Yeah. And, there's a horrible tragedy that happened there. And but it's the natural result.
Well, the police stood down and then they herded the alt-right people. Most of them were just reporters covering the alt-right. They herded the very suspicious guys with all the Democrat backgrounds, dressed up like Nazis, into the Antifa, and then somebody got killed. We'll be right back with Mark Randazza. Stay with us. Well, Mark Randazza is here with us, a really smart guy. You want to start doing a podcast with us. We're about to set these big podcast studios. We're launching on TV and radio. We've already gotten over 400 TV affiliates, over 80 cable stations just in 6 months. So a lot of exciting things happening.
Look, if I can get more people to believe in the neutral principle of the First Amendment, I'm happy to do it.
It's exciting.
And neutral principles of the First Amendment, due process, and nonviolence. I mean, if you can, you convert one person to believe in those things, then I'm happy.
Let me ask you this question: knowing how people work, being one of the top, known trial lawyers out there for the First Amendment, and also one of the legal theorist guys that's quoted everywhere, looking at this fight with the left committing to being anti-free speech, looking at the left really becoming everything they claim they're opposing, and being financed by a lot of big corporations cold-bloodedly who want to control this country because they don't want Trump doing populist things that are good for the people. And that's what he does. He's fired all the lobbyists, everything. It's just incredible how selfless it is. And I'm not somebody to grovel at somebody's feet. It's just true. And I've been persecuted for the truth as well. To sit there and see that, Mark, and disagree if you want to, obviously, at a gut level, how do you see this fight ending? I mean, it's up to all of us, but I just know we're in an epic struggle right now. And the left, because they've lost, is like trying all these things that no one else does, because attacking women and children and old people gets you totally discredited or killed. And I'm not saying I'm going to kill you. I'm just saying the road they're going down is villainous, and I don't understand why they don't see it's hurting them.
Look, I got two predictions. I got an optimistic one and a pessimistic one. For a long time, the right is where the cold wind blew from. The right didn't want communist speech, and First Amendment lawyers defended the communists, defended pornographers. We defended people that the right and the religious wanted to shut down, unpopular religious views, what have you. Now that polarity has flipped. And I'm looking at this as such a great opportunity, because when I can talk to right-wing people and they are all starting to dig down deep and hold on to that marketplace of ideas, that Oliver Wendell Holmesian view of a robust First Amendment, and I say, great, now stay put. And keeping them put there, because it's going to change. The wind is going to change, and then it's going to be from the other side again.
Well, I agree. Here's the problem.
I keep enough people staying put on that ground when then left-wing speech gets attacked again. Maybe we wind up one day, and I can look around at a crowd of people, and I got leftists and rightists, and I've got communists and fascists all sitting together saying, okay, we disagree on all this stuff, but we agree on freedom of expression. And that's the dream of America. That's the eagle's blood. That's what this is.
That's what fuels the country.
That's what we are, man. I mean, look, if we are not the Constitution, America is not a country like any other, all right? We're not an ethnic state. We're not all related. I mean, I have nothing in common ethnically with a native Hawaiian or somebody who's...
So what we have is the Bill of Rights and Constitution, and the fact that just a little bit of that made us so successful. It shows the marketplace of ideas is king, and that people will, in a real free market, go with what's best. So anybody that thinks they're promoting what is the answer, you should support free speech because you're going to win.
Right. America is an idea. It is that idea. And, if we lose that, then what are we? We're nothing. We really mean nothing.
Now, that's the positive view. I want to get to the negative. But
the negative is much worse, okay? I see that it could go the other way, because what we have is people increasingly, now I hear people on the right saying, let's treat the left the way they treat us. Let's beat them at their own game.
That's where I was trying to go and interrupt it, because I see the right wing going, well, if you censored them for their speech, then you got to censor the other side, adopting it and becoming the police of it.
And that's what I'm worried about. I'm really worried, because it's a natural human reaction is, hey, you guys want to do it to us? We're sick of it. We're going to do it to you. And then you break the ideal down, and all we are is divided into tribes, and then tribes divide into violence, and next thing you know...
Countries collapse.
Yeah, every civil war starts this way. And I'm not saying there's a civil war coming. I'm just saying even now we're in like a very cold civil war. And I hate seeing that. I believe in what this country is supposed to stand for, and I want people to come around to say, let's stick with that neutral principle.
And by the way, you're absolutely right. And there are outside corporate and international powers on record fomenting this. Communist China owns most of Hollywood now. They're fomenting all this race war crap, all this man against woman stuff that the weakest minds are buying into. And I don't know how I tell an average leftist, Antifa call themselves Mao Youth Brigades. When they take their black off, they're really communist. I have video of it all over the country. And it's like, dude, Mao, they kill Buddhists. They put them in... communist China is a nightmare for people. Why would you be endorsing that?
Yeah. I remember when I was in college, it was a group of Maoists. I said, what is wrong with you? I can see you being a Leninist, all right? I can see you believing in communism. Look, every philosophy has something in it worth learning from, even communism. But Maoism? What is wrong with you? There's no maybe a Pol Pot brigade would be a little more ridiculous, but
yeah. Well, see, that's because you actually are an intellectual and actually know about Mao. I mean, it was the biggest failure of the Chinese say it was. He killed 80+ million people. It's a total freaking nightmare. But they choose like the worst thing because it started on college campuses, and then they took over with young people bullying everyone else. So I'm telling you, this Antifa move is a Maoist attack, but they're all about deception. Oh, we're anti-fascist. No, they're Maoist.
So
I can take you to UT right now, or I can take you to Southwest Texas, any of the universities within 20 miles. And I'm telling you, they are, we've gone to their meetings, we've infiltrated them. They are Maoists. They actually pray to Mao Zedong.
I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, I can understand any kind, the allure of some extreme philosophies. It's always going to be alluring to some 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid. I mean, that's when you're exploring different ideas.
Oh, my God. You're right.
Yeah, but Mao, I mean, that's, Mao and child molestation are probably the two things that I'm like, there's no reason to experiment with those. So, look, my pessimistic view is we have people who just simply divide into tribes. We decide that as that wind changes, next thing you know, we use the tricks. The right uses the tricks that the left was using. The left uses the tricks the right was using. And then we have nobody left in the middle saying, let's defend this one principle. So what I'm finding so difficult to do, though, is to yell at people on the right and say, just stay where you are. If the left had done that, back when they were defending communist speech, they were defending porn, they were the ones who were really, allowing religious liberty, getting rid of compelled speech. I mean, we owe the left so much when it comes to protection of freedom of expression.
But you can argue because they were only doing it to undermine the existing structure. Once they got in, they try to block it.
Look, I don't care why they were doing it. I care what they did. And, we owe, if you believe in the First Amendment, like its heritage is leftist. But now I'm just shocked when I see people who, 10 years ago would have said something completely different. Now saying, well, maybe the First Amendment isn't such a great thing. Or maybe,
well, hell, they're saying they want to basically repeal it in the cases against me. Thank you so much. We'll have you on the broadcast more today. Mark Randazza. Special guest coming up that launched the Walk Away movement. Coming up straight ahead. So Brandon Straka is a gay hairdresser from New York and the founder of #WalkAway, one of the top hashtags the last 2 weeks, and a movement that calls for walking away from the Democratic Party of violence, intolerance, divisiveness, and hatred. And you've got state reps doing it. You've got Congress folks talking about it. You've got Alan Dershowitz talking about leaving the party until they stop acting like crazed maniacs. I mean, it's just crazy. So Brandon joins us. Again, #WalkAway. You can see his Twitter there on screen. And he recently went into an electronics store, and they wouldn't sell him a microphone, saying that they thought he was, quote, alt-right. So this is a very, very dangerous precedent. We've seen Fox News reporters obviously run out of the Supreme Court building last night by angry crowds. We've seen the physical attacks, the calls for kidnapping and raping Barron by Hollywood stars. It's just a very vicious climate. Antifa beating people up all over the place. I mean, if the Republicans acted like this, I wouldn't even support the Republican Party. I was arrested twice by George W. Bush for asking questions at press conferences and thought that he was a horrible person, and I still do. So I'm a libertarian. But I like Trump because he's turning the country around. But enough from me. Brandon Straka joins us at US Minority or Us Minority. And there's so much to talk about. He's in London, and I just appreciate his courage, because living in New York and doing what he does, particularly being, a former Democrat and still I would guess a liberal, is what they're really afraid of. They really bully people. They really attack people that are free thinkers and aren't being inducted into this cult by successive approximation. So, Brandon, thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Where should we start? I mean, start at the beginning and then just go through what's happened the last few weeks as your movement has become so huge. I think because it strikes on the nerve of many liberals I know, many progressives who now are abandoning the Democratic Party.
Well, I was a lifelong Democrat. I was always a liberal. And after the election of Donald Trump, I saw a lot of things that really opened my eyes to how dishonest the media had been during his campaign and how even more dishonest they were after his election. And that would have been bad enough on its own, I think. But as a gay man, I think where the line was really crossed for me was it became very, very clear that the media was using minorities by telling us, putting out these stories that were designed to kind of terrify us and keep us in this, they were selling fear. It was just fear mongering. And it took a little while to figure that out. And it took the help of some, people that were close to me pointing that out to me. But once I saw it, it was one of those things that you can't ever unsee. And so I started trying to kind of speak out about this to other people from two different perspectives. One was, people were running around literally hysterical saying, we have a Nazi in the White House. We have a Nazi in the White House. He's staffing his administration full of, KKK. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm discovering that this actually isn't true. So I'm approaching people and saying, look, things aren't as bad as they seem. This thing that you're so upset about, this thing that you're so angry and worked up about, actually, it's kind of being made up by the media. But what I was met with was not people going, oh, thank goodness you've showed me something that, makes it so that I don't have to be so upset. They were upset with me for bringing them evidence that, Trump's actually not such a horrible human being after all. And maybe we don't have a Nazi in the White House. I started to think, well, this is pretty peculiar. It's almost as though they just want to hate him. People don't want to be presented with evidence that shows that, things aren't as bad as they seem. Well, the more people started turning on me and unfriending me, saying nasty things to me, dragging my reputation through the mud, I thought, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm going to fight back. And I sat down and I wrote what I call kind of the definitive manifesto of everything that's wrong with liberalism and the Democrat Party. And the reason why they're involved is because all of these politicians that I had trusted for so long, who I thought actually cared about me, cared about my community, they went along with all of this. Every lie that the media put out, every false story or every omission, they were right there. Anytime there was a microphone in their hand to back it up and say, oh yes, he's expected to sign an executive order taking all of your rights away this week. We're doing what we can to stop it. They went right along with all the fear mongering. So I created this video and I created a movement, which is basically encouraging people to walk away from the Democrat Party, walk away from liberalism. I'm not telling anyone where to go. If they end up finding themselves on the right, like I have, great. I now am a registered Republican. And after a lot of research and, really, really digging deep, I'm a Trump supporter now. And I can't wait to vote for him in 2020. But, I'm not telling anyone where to go or what to believe or what to do. I'm saying open your eyes, do your own research, and at the very least, look at the toxic divisiveness, hostility, and now basically very close to, if not exactly, calling for violence on the left and get away from it.
Well, exactly. But take Donald Trump, because there's obviously been some, anti-gay, bigoted stuff that's gone on the Republican Party before, but that's gone away the last few decades. But Trump, with Peter Thiel, who got outed by the liberals because he wouldn't be their minion, and then he's out there, and you got Donald Trump saying, let's all be together and let's all be friends, which everybody should applaud. The media wouldn't even cover it. In fact, They said Trump's anti-LGBT at his convention. And just it's the lying. And that's why so many people, like Candace Owens, she had the feminist movement online stalking her, she confirmed, posing as right-wing males, harassing her. And she learned it was them using it to steer, because she was smart, good-looking, like you, to steer her under their control. It's a cult. And when you find out, wow, you're trying to program me to sit there and hate other people and be your slave, I mean, it from folks I've talked to, like Candace, it makes you mad.
Oh yeah, it makes me very angry. It makes me very angry, and it's when I became a liberal, I thought it was because I wanted to be around other people. I had always heard everybody on the right is very racist. Everybody on the right is very small-minded and bigoted. I believed these messages that I heard from the left, and whether it was ever true or not. At this point, it's safe to say we have very much overcorrected. And at this point, all of those things that I became a liberal to fight against, liberalism now is. It's just a constant hostility towards white people. It's constant hostility towards men. there's this bizarre push to sort of demonize heteronormativity. And myself as a gay man, it's not even about gay rights anymore. It's now about adding all of these bizarre sub-acronyms, LGBTQIA. I don't know what gender fluid means. I don't know what two-spirit means. I don't know what gender non-binary is. But I'm told all the time now that as a gay man, I'm privileged. And that, these other non-binary gender fluid people in my community are victims of oppression, and that I am a privileged white gay man. So I should shut my mouth and march along with what they tell me to do.
And then you learn the Tavistock Institute cooked it all up. It's mind control, and they're using America's openness and the fact that we are a very classically liberal society against us, and then bringing in authoritarianism as the answer to free people. And really, all it is classic fog of war confusion. But look, I can tell why they're scared of you. I mean, you're very articulate, and you've got a lot of charisma. And I think you should be very, very careful. I know you've already been threatened and stuff. We'll talk about it when we come back. And it's not about victimology. I get threatened and attacked too. But let me tell you, they're scared of you because you're a good-looking guy. You're articulate. You're telling the truth. We're about to go to break, but how much harassment have you dealt with?
Well, I've actually dealt with more harassment on a personal level than on a public level. The public level, I guess I don't really care about that much. I just sort of disregard those messages. But some really nasty stuff from people who have known me for a long, long time and should know better.
Exactly. So you've had family, you've had friends turn on you, walk away from you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. If only they walked away. I mean, believe me, there were some choice words on the way out the door.
Well, Mark Randazza didn't want to tell the story. He's First Amendment lawyer here. What happened to him with his family? It's crazy. And he's like a liberal First Amendment lawyer, and they're calling him, it's crazy. Brandon, we'll be right back at Twitter.
President Trump gives every indication by what he says and what he does and what he doesn't do that he's mean as a wolverine.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
But they took a lot of people away. People that they thought were going to make trouble for them. People that had guns or things they wanted, they just took them away.
Where?
Re-education camps, that's what they call it.
So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents, or kids belong to their families, and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
I have decided we really need camps for adults. And we need the kind of camps that you all run. I mean, really.
All persons of Japanese descent were required to register. Now they were taken to racetracks and fairgrounds where the Army almost overnight had built assembly centers.
Come on. I'm a sorry citizen. I refuse to recognize you guys.
What kind of a situation in the U.S. would you see that happening?
I mean, we've got a lot of constitutionalists and a lot of people that stockpile weapons.
Plus, you have a lot of people that are coming out of the military that have the ability and the knowledge to build IEDs and to defeat law enforcement techniques.
These people are radicalized and they don't support the United States and they're disloyal to the United States. It's our right and our obligation to segregate them from the normal community.
And so what we're doing here, and let's not kid about it, we're building a domestic army because the government is afraid of its own citizens.
Put your gun down, really?
Rallying patriots worldwide in defense of human liberty. It's Alex Jones.
Are you some kind of a constitutionalist?
So these people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
as a prize that a bunch of multinational corporations are using race war, culture war, it's in the WikiLeaks, to turn us against each other. Doesn't mean there isn't racism or any of that stuff going on. It means that there are people exacerbating it. And let me tell you, Brandon Straka of the Walk Away movement that's just been out for 2 weeks, it's being demonized and attacked by the entire left. And let me tell you, I know when destiny happens, I know at a gut level when I've just heard the answer. So as soon as I get off air here and Paul Watson takes over in 15 minutes from London, where our guest just so happens to be, I am going to get on the phone, the bat phone, and I never call the bat phone. Believe me, they're going to answer because I never call. When I call, it's always, you know, important. And get them on the phone with this gentleman because I know when I heard it that it was victory to unify America, to stop the Civil War. He wasn't going to announce it today, but he's going to go ahead and get into some of it. He won't get into behind-the-scenes stuff, but I know this has been brought to the president, but you can't do much to the White House because that's so controlled because the national security issues. You got to do it through the campaign. So, Brandon, please lay out what you said and then also how they're attacking you and, you know, their ridiculous disinfo. Because when people walk away from the Democrats and in capitals across the country and in D.C. come together and hug each other left and right for a future of America and the Antifa shows up and there's only a half dozen of them, it is going to be Martin Luther King level, I have a dream stuff. I mean, I just know destiny when I hear it. So you're asking my advice. I think you should tell people your millennium level idea. I mean, it's like one of those ideas that you only hear a few times in a lifetime and usually people ignore it. This is history. And that's why there's, so please tell folks the idea you came up with.
Yeah, you got it, Alex. So, you know, a lot of what's coming out of the left right now is this narrative that my campaign is Russian bots, which is absolutely ridiculous. Of course, we have real people giving testimonials for the Walk Away campaign. But it sort of sparked an idea in my mind, since there's going to be a lot of naysayers out there who are going to try to dismiss this campaign and what's happening with Walk Away as bots and as not real. I thought to myself, you know what we really need to do is I'm going to organize a walk away march on Washington, a nationwide walk away march. And what this is going to be is really unifying people from the left, unifying people from the right, bringing everybody together kind of on the same page. And listen, if you're not walking away from the Democrat Party, that's fine. But I think that at this point, people should at least be willing to say, I'm walking away from the hatefulness. I'm walking away from the divisiveness. I'm walking away from the violent rhetoric and the division. So this is what I want to do. I want to, in the fall, have an amazing demonstration organization nationwide where we do a nationwide march on Washington. I want it to be the biggest, most incredible, and most powerful march this nation has ever seen.
I totally agree. And like you said, you need the president to get involved. That will make it all happen quicker. But they're going to try to launch a summer of rage and civil war in their own words. So I think at least the first level of the march, where, you know, in New York or D.C. or wherever you pick as a prototype, have the police out and everything, and just have it be a march of unity to support the First Amendment and progress for America. It doesn't mean you're walking away from the Democrats. It mean, and for some of the right wing does some mean stuff too. I'm not perfect. And because Mike Cernovich was on a few weeks ago and he says, and he's a smart guy, he said he felt it. It was like a couple of years ago he knew Trump would win, just like I did. He has this image of not attacking the left anymore, even when they attack us, but just trying to hug them, like Kanye West has been talking about. And of course, there'll still be haters, but I agree, checkmating these globalists trying to make us all, these social engineers, fight with each other, and just having a march where we're all over here, and this is our side, liberal, conservative, whatever, we're going to hug, we're going to call for unity, we're going to call for not being violent, and then let the haters be over here. And I think it's going to be so clear that it's going to devastate them. But here's the deal. You think they're after you now. This idea, your leadership, why didn't I think of this? They are really going to come after you now. And I'm not just saying that. I know in my gut level. So I asked you, I said, do you have a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe? You go, yeah, we just set it up. I said, listen, even before he came on, I said, you know, I want to make a $10,000 donation. Not that I have a lot of money, this fella, because I can tell what he's doing really scares him and is really good. And then once I heard you say, yeah, what do? I need to talk to the president. I need to try to get some help. We need to help you right now. So you've just launched, you know, a funding operation, try to get some basic money for this. You need to be flooded, folks. And believe me, I know at a gut level what's going to work and what's not. So if people fund this, I couldn't see a better place for people to do it. So I'm pledging $10,000 that we'll donate right after the show to the account. I want it online. I want people to see that happen. So please make sure that happens. You've raised $26,000. You need to raise way more than $30,000 to launch something that is walking away from the globalists trying to cause a civil war. We have their own documents. This is beautiful. Walk away from the race war. Walk away from the sex war. Walk away from the globalist and Soros-instituted civil war he's trying to fund. That's just beautiful. Please continue. How do folks go donate right now?
Well, there are two ways that people can donate. I've set up a GoFundMe and I've set up a Patreon account. Both of these things are accessible if they go to walkawaycampaign.com and click on sponsorship. The GoFundMe is great if you're somebody who's just able to make a one-time donation of any amount. We appreciate anything that you can do. The Patreon is a great option if you're somebody who's able to do, there you go, if you're somebody who's able to do a monthly sponsorship. What that means is you'll sign up once a month, they'll take something out of your account, whether it's $5, whether it's $1,000.
And say the address again. Say the address again.
Walkawaycampaign.com.
Now let me add this right now. When you have a total win-win, you know it already. It's like, you know, you meet the woman you know is going to be your wife you're going to have children with. It's guaranteed. Okay, I'm telling you, this is already one of the biggest things out there. They're already totally scared. This idea is pure genius. This guy's ready to carry it out. He's already been having victory from day one. My gut tells me, I know he's for real. And I'm telling you, we have a landslide here if this takes off, not just a win. We have a landslide 2018 securing the entire future. I'm getting chills right now. And just thank God that when we reached out, you said, oh, I'm already reaching out. I want your advice on this. This is perfect storm stuff, Brandon.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. Yeah, I had a feeling that you would be somebody who would be very enthusiastic about this. And I feel exactly the same way you do. I mean, it was my idea, but I also thought to myself, this is something that really possibly not only has the potential to do a lot of healing, but possibly even preventing a civil war.
And you're just saying, just walk away. Like, it means don't fight. It means just don't be under this cult control. Oh, this is divinely inspired. I'm telling you, I know the zeitgeist when I'm close to it, and I am now in the center of it. Oh, ooh. We'll be right back with 5 more minutes with our guest, then Paul Watts is taking over. But this is history. Brandon Straka of the incredible international movement Walk Away, hashtag Walk Away. He's here, and he shared with me this idea of, you're going to call me a Russian bot, you're going to make all these lies up. I want people to come together in mass rallies. Well, we've been talking about this, and I can tell you, I know the White House is already on it, and we're going to make some phone calls as soon as I'm off in 5 minutes. But listen, things are moving fast. Please come back on tomorrow for 30 minutes so you can just talk, because I'm really impressed. No wonder they're so scared. In the 4 minutes we have left, Brandon, what else do you want to impart to people about your vision and really this this shift we're seeing, not just by you, but when I go to the mall, I get mobbed by minorities, blacks, Hispanics, Asians. They want to come together. They want freedom. They see through it. I think libertarian conservatism, Americana, is the new punk rock.
I absolutely agree. Friends of mine and I always say that conservatism is the new counterculture. It's actually so much more fun over here, and it's actually so much more inclusive. You know, and there's so much more actual love and tolerance happening on the right than there is on the left. I mean, I guess I think that's a good ending point right there. You asked me, what do I want to say? I mean, if I were to speak directly to my own community or even racial minorities in America, you know, I would say to these people, look, the people on the left and the Democrats want to try to tell you over and over again that they're on your side, they're looking out for you, that you're only safe with them. But the truth of the matter is, they're actually using fear tactics to keep you in a constant state of terror so that they can manipulate your behavior. And that's not happening on the right. In fact, on the right, I'm finding a lot of love and warm embrace from the whole community over here since I began the Walk Away campaign. And I want minorities in America to know that you have a choice. You don't have to be a Democrat. You don't have to be a liberal. You actually have a seat at the table on the right. There's a lot of really great people who would love to have you over on the right in the thinking class of people. And I hope that people consider walking away.
And I like how you made the point, beyond even walking away from the Democrats, because it'd be great if the Democrats reformed themselves and became, you know, free thinkers again, because we need more than 2 parties, not just one that's being half decent now. It's very frightening that we've only got one party halfway operating, you know, in reality, because the Republicans have their own problems. Is that just walk away from the Democrat cult. Walk away from the buses show up with the new kids going to college, and they bring them in and go, you got to be in our group. This is the professors. They're all out to get you. There's Nazis on campus. And then they go spray paint swastikas on their dorm at night hundreds of times and get caught. This is what they did to Candace Owens. I mean, it's like, it's so authoritarian. This is the new authoritarianism, and people are rejecting it.
Yes. Well, I mean, the other day I was refused service at a store by another gay man. Yeah. So, yeah.
And what do you say? I think you're alt-right. You're going to use this for speech, so you can't have it, as if you're even alt-right, that some Hillary, Southern Poverty Law Center, you know, I mean, let me tell you, almost all those Nazi leaders have been proven to be operatives, okay? They're actors, it's staged. I'm sorry I'm ranting. It's just to say that you're alt-right or I'm alt-right is horse manure.
I don't even know what alt-right means. I don't think anybody really knows what it means. But I can tell you that I'm not alt-right. I'm actually just a really good person. I believe in equality for all people. I believe in empowering all people in America, whether they be black, white, straight, gay. I think everybody deserves an equal opportunity and an equal chance. And that's what I'm about. So if that's alt-right, then I don't know. You know?
Looking at Kanye, just the energy, and from you, I get the same. It's just an energy of, we're not going to be controlled. We're going to move forward. We're not going to be inducted into this politically correct cult. And that is universal. That is unifying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, as gay people, you know, we kind of went through this civil rights struggle, you know, we're fighting for, you know, marriage equality, this and that. We got that. And this, in my opinion, should be the most exciting time in anybody in the gay community's life, because we're not even a wedge issue anymore. Our rights are not up for debate. And so this should be a time where it's like we get to be full participants in the democratic
Instead,
process.
they're creating a new wedge and saying you're now part of the elite class. Let me say bye to you during the break. Amazing. Paul Watson's coming up. History's happening right now. I love the smell of victory in the morning. And if you're a leftist, authoritarian control freak, or a right-wing control freak, this isn't your show, and I understand that. We're trying to unify around believing in free market and religious freedom and economic freedom, and we've got a big tent for everybody. And we just had Brandon Strzok on, who has launched the hashtag walkaway movement. And the left, just like they call me a Russian bot or Trump a Russian bot, he then had the idea to have a nationwide march. And he got it directly to the president. I've been authorized to tell you that, but then a few days went on, and so I'm going to try to get him ponied up, hitched up with some folks. And that's why I do a lot of this behind the scenes, who can understand how big this is. And I recommended how this should be done. This is such a big deal. I would have some Oprah Winfrey-style deals in a controlled environment, because the left's going to try to infiltrate this, for the left and right who don't agree with the left and all their race war to come together and say, we believe in a future. We believe in not having civil war. We believe in not having violence. Gives the president a chance to see it. You know, have everybody from Peter Thiel to, you know, from Judge Napolitano to you name it there. Because the wizard's never talking. He just keeps walking. I don't even need to be involved in it. I'm the bad guy that hits the barbed wire and says all the hard things and gets the attacks. I don't even want a seat at that table, even though I've been offered one. I will not be there. And that's my job. I never talk. I just keep walking. Even though I talk, you get what I'm saying. I'm always moving on to the next target. So let me tell you, I know zeitgeist when I see it. I know victory when I see it. This walkaway thing is explosive. And I was at the mall this weekend, and I was mobbed by Hispanic Americans, mobbed. Because they know the media's punking everybody and playing games. And of every walk in life, guys with tattoos, families, you name it, black families, you name it. But I saw some white people came over and shook my hand, but I'd see liberals going, oh, 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 and then they would get even more freaked out. Some of the liberal store clerks saw me sitting there taking photos with Hispanic family after Hispanic family, like 6, 7 in a row. And I saw some leftists just like, they were looking. And I even walked over. My wife's like, please don't turn your camera on. I'm like, let me guess, you don't like me. And the guy looks down and he goes, Alex, I don't know what to think anymore. You see? I took my daughters a week and a half ago to camp. And I pull up where they tell you to go to get all their trunks off and all that. And it's all the young you know, 16, 17, 18-year-old camp counselors. The males are there, you know, in their evil gender role, unloading the trunks. And they're all listeners. And then I go to take both my daughters to their camp, separate areas in this big complex. And there's InfoWars stickers. I'm looking here, there. Paul Watson, they love him. They love Steven Crowder. We are so close to victory right now. And thanks to Kanye and Drudge and everybody. And it's a magic time, Paul. It's a magic time. What do you think of this Brandon Strzok idea of a nationwide march and movements everywhere of people that don't want to kill each other, people that don't hate each other from the left and right coming together? Not even walking away from the Democrats. I say that too, but walking away from the hate and walking away from any Democratic rally. They always tell the Democrats, don't talk to Alex or don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to Fox News. Don't talk to, it's a cult. No, we're going to talk. Walk away from the cult that tells you don't talk. Paul, how big is this? I mean, at a gut level.
It's big because they no longer have an argument, Alex. The reason they say don't talk to people is because that muscle has become so flaccid, that argument muscle, that they don't have one. So to even engage in a conversation means automatic defeat to them because they've got no argument whatsoever. In fact, I don't know if you've seen the video. I wrote an article about this about a couple of hours ago. It's up on Infowars.com. It's literally a guy outside the Supreme Court with a bullhorn reading out constitutional passages, and they're just screaming in his face. It's like scream helplessly at the sky, but they're doing it in this guy's face. And it's literally all they've got left.
What's the name of the article? Everybody needs to get this viral. Infowars.com. What's the name of the article? Oh, just 300 show up for protest against Trump's Supreme Court?
It's not that one. It's not that one. It's the later one. I'll find it.
We'll go back to it in a minute.
Liberals triggered into literal screaming fit by man reading Constitution. It's up on Infowars.com right now.
Continue, please.
So, yeah, basically, the only criticism you get for that walk-away movement is, oh, but you're playing identity politics, Alex. Well, no, we're using identity politics in some senses to unite people. They only ever use them to divide people. So that's where people can actually come together and have an impact. And when all you've literally got is having a screaming hissy fit in someone's face as a means of conversation, that's not going to resonate very well with any right-thinking person, is it? So at this point, we're way ahead of the game, Alex.
We'll have that audio and video. You're taking over right now. You got a big guest coming on. I should have mentioned that. Thanks for letting me hijack it, but I always love talking to you here on air, Paul. But exactly. We're saying to Democrats that are disillusioned by the hating America rhetoric, all the race baiting, all the Russian bot crap, who are sick of Hillary getting ready to run again, just come out and meet us like a neighborhood, you know, party or something, and everybody that wants to fight with each other, go over there. Everybody that wants to come together and hug, come over here. The WikiLeaks, all of it is about division. And we're about unity, just saying we're all allowed to have freedom of speech. I think this, just like you said, hashtag walk away was genius. It's so simple. Don't do anything violent, whatever. Walk away, and then walk away and find normal people and come together. I'm telling you, we have just discovered the next level. I know it. I'm telling you, we got it, all of this. I could tell that guy's totally for real. We've got to fully get behind this, Paul.
Yeah, and we see similar things happening in the UK. You've probably heard about this Trump baby balloon that's going to be flown over Houses of Parliament when Trump visits on Friday. He's not even going to visit London, but they're going to do it anyway. Okay, so it took them about a month with sustained mainstream media coverage, a month to raise about £30,000, which is about $40,000, to pay for that Trump balloon. Somebody did an oppositional response to that, a Sadiq Khan baby balloon. It took them 3 days to launch a greater amount of money with zero press attention whatsoever, virtually zero. So your guest is talking about, you know, conservatism as a new counterculture. They can no longer claim to be anti-establishment. In fact, when you dig into this, the people behind the Trump baby balloon, they're very wealthy. They own like 2 million. The guy who paid for it owns 2 million townhouses in London. He's from a wealthy political family.
2 million townhouses?
No, I mean £2 million. But he's from a wealthy political family. He's claiming that it's anti-establishment. Okay, you're not anti-establishment. You're upper middle class. You've got a smorgasbord of mainstream media attention to get this funded.
And all you can raise is £30,000, like $50,000. My only question is, why is the Sadiq Khan baby balloon, why are his diapers not full of crap? We need brown diapers on that piece of crap.
Or you could make it into a kind of pig, which, in fact, that has been suggested by the organizers.
Oh, he's an Islamist. A pig in diapers. A pig with his head on it.
It was actually Piers Morgan who suggested that, because it was Sadiq Khan that approved the Trump baby blimp. I mean, he's not busy enough with all the violent crime happening in London. He had time to approve that, though. So is he going to approve himself as a baby, a pig baby, and is that going to be flown over London? Because they've already got it funded. They're just waiting on approval, and that is the guest who I'm going to be talking to later today on the show.
And let's not forget, that baby is kicking their butt up and down the street.
Well, it will be, yeah. But we've got a Trump visit this weekend, Friday. You know, we've had visits from Erdogan, the Islamist dictator of Turkey, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. They torture people. They put gay people in camps. They're basically war criminals, what they're doing in Yemen. No protest against that. But Donald Trump comes, the leader of the free world, and they all spit out their dummies. They're all out on the streets once again, Alex.
You're taking over, Paul. Great job. My point is, Trump is dominating, and they've got him as a caricature making fun of him. Well, this idiot just aced all of you. Newswars.com, Infowars.com. The big 4th of July sale, 50% off, and free shipping ends today. We need your financial support. Please commit to do it. It's great products you need. Paul Watson takes over now.
We're live. It is the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show on this July 10th edition, 2018. In the next segment, we're going to talk to our guest, who is Yanni Brouwer. He is the man behind the Sadiq Khan baby balloon, which is a counter-protest, in essence, to the Donald Trump baby balloon that's going to be flown over the Houses of Parliament, or at least nearby. On Friday, when Trump visits the United Kingdom, he's not going to be visiting London at all, because basically our cowardly conservative in name only government would not extend the invitation of a state visit to Donald Trump. It's only going to be a working visit. So he's not even going to get anywhere near London, basically, because they're so petrified, God forbid, that protesters might emerge. Again, a damning indictment of the cowardice, the sheer unparalleled cowardice of our conservative in name only government that has basically just betrayed Brexit full scale now. And finally, at least they're being honest about the fact, and we can move forward from that position. But we're going to talk about the Trump balloon, the Sadiq Khan balloon later on. Let's talk first about YouTube, which has basically introduced new guidelines or new algorithm changes once again, without notifying their subscriber base, without notifying their biggest creators. Obviously, they do that every single time. Headline out of Wired News: YouTube debuts plan to promote and fund authoritative news. Well, gee, I wonder what this is going to be all about. Following a year in which YouTube has repeatedly promoted conspiracy theory videos, it didn't promote them, they just happened to pop up. During breaking news events like the shootings in Parkland, the company now announced Monday a slew of new features it hopes will make news on the platform more reliable and less susceptible to manipulation. The company is also investing $25 million in grants to news organizations looking to expand their video operations. Now, this is the key point. According to YouTube executives, the goal is to identify authoritative news sources, bring those videos to the top of users' feeds, and support quality journalism. So in other words, all these news organizations who exist on YouTube are totally crap at it. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They need the system to be gamed. They need a helping hand simply to compete with the people on YouTube who do know what they're doing. That's what it's all about. You go and look at some of these news organizations, the likes of CNN. I mean, combined, my own channel, Alex Jones' channel, got more subscribers than CNN, or at least it did on last check. Most of their videos don't go viral. You look at YouTube platform, YouTube content creators like MSNBC, mainstream news organizations, NBC, CBS. They're terrible. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to have viral videos. They're not solely focused on it. So now they're going to be given a handout, basically. Not like they're, giant monopoly conglomerate organizations already with huge swaths of money coming in. They're going to be given huge amounts of money by Google to compete with other people on YouTube. And that's not enough. No, they need to change the algorithm to rank all these legacy media news outlets above everyone else, because even with millions and millions of dollars flooding into their coffers, that still is not enough to help them compete, because they're so utterly useless, anodyne, boring. Nobody wants to watch them, so they need the system to be gamed. This is what I've been warning about for over a year now. The fact that we're all slaves to the algorithm. In fact, you can look at the search engine. Obviously, YouTube is owned by Google. Look at the search engine as well. I mean, I can search for headlines that are almost verbatim what I wrote on Infowars.com, or the key terms of an article that I wrote for Infowars.com about anything, mainly about the migrant crisis and things like that. The top 10, the top 20 links on the first page, Snopes.com, Washington Post, all these ridiculous fact checker websites that have proven to be completely partisan, completely biased time and time again. Even when you put in key terms for an article, it ignores those terms and simply throws up negative information, for example, about Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones has caught, you search for stuff about the migrant crisis, articles I wrote a year ago, 2 years ago, it comes up with Alex Jones's court case. There's nothing whatsoever to do with it because they've artificially gamed the algorithm to promote negative information about Infowars.com, about Alex Jones, and put it above the information that you're actually searching for. So they're that intent on burying information, on manipulating people. We've had studies which we've featured before where they can shift millions and millions of votes on the day of an election simply by placing one candidate above another in a Google search result. They can shift millions of votes. They've proven it in India, in all these different countries. So it doesn't matter how much reach you have, really. If they control the algorithm, then we're in trouble. That's why, you know, they're now finally starting about some kind of government regulation. They see Google search ranking manipulation is affecting elections. They did a giant study into this in India and a couple of other countries. And again, depending on the platforms, how they were presented in a negative or positive light, and the search results in order, they could shift millions and millions of votes. Now they're doing the same on YouTube and talking about, in fact, they mention us. They get into it in this article. That's one reason why known propagandists, they're talking about the algorithm, spreading falsehoods is one reason why known propagandists like Alex Jones of Infowars have managed to build wildly successful channels on the back of conspiracy theories. So again, it's this attitude that they need to protect you from conspiracy theories. God forbid. And in fact, in this article, they talk about things like the Bermuda Triangle. It's not even political. You can't even have people making fun conspiracy videos about the Bermuda Triangle without them slapping a fact check on it. Like, who even cares? Like slapping a fact check on Bigfoot or something like that. UFOs. It's not even political. And they say, no, we're even going to relegate that content. How dare you even talk about it? So again, it's this nannying idea that you have to be protected from conspiracy theory videos on YouTube. No, some people want to watch that. So if they want to search for it, they want to watch it, that's what should come up. Most of these conspiracy videos annoy the hell out of me too. You know, everything's a false flag, everything's staged. But if people want to watch that, they should be allowed to watch it without you nannying them and saying, no, you can't have that. So we're literally going to change the algorithm and bury you beneath 20 stupid CNN videos, which aren't even related to the subject that you're searching about. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it shows how desperate they are in trying to come back and trying to compete with people who literally spend 10, 15 years of their lives at this point building a YouTube career, building a YouTube personality, building the infrastructure of actual independent news organizations. I'm not even talking about Infowars. I'm talking about, you know, people like Philip DeFranco. He's essentially his own independent news organization. Those are the people that are going to get punished by it. And it's because they can't compete. It's because to be successful on YouTube, you need to have a personality. Okay? Most people who work for the mainstream media do not have a personality. And it takes years and years to build a loyal audience that will want to watch every single one of your videos. That's how you build up an audience. That's how you go viral. That's how you build up a huge subscriber base. Mainstream media has no idea how to achieve that. So now YouTube, Google, has said, oh, we'll just give you $25 million each. We'll just boost you up artificially. We'll rig the system. And now will you be able to compete? Even after this, they probably will still fail because they're so utterly useless and they don't know what they're doing when it comes to YouTube, and they're just going to try and censor everybody else. We'll be back on the Alex Jones Show live, Infowars.com. Don't Go away. We are back. It is the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show. Now, we're going to delve into this issue of the Sadiq Khan baby balloon. Of course, the big news headlines this week were all about the Donald Trump baby balloon. And in fact, I'm reading a headline here from Spiked magazine. Who's the real baby here? It gets into who's behind this Donald Trump baby balloon. It's a 20-foot baby balloon of Donald Trump in a nappy, which they plan to fly near the Houses of Parliament when Trump visits this week, despite the fact that Donald Trump isn't going anywhere near London because our conservative and name-only government is so afraid of the protesters who might show up. So basically, they've got this 20-foot balloon ready to fly near the Houses of Parliament. This is what it says about it in this Spiked magazine article, Who's the Real Baby Here? The anti-Trump stunt has been organized by environmental activist Leo Murray, the great-grandson of Labour politician Anthony Greenwood. Murray, who rents out 2 flats in a £1.8 million townhouse in Hammersmith, has written a piece for The Guardian explaining his reasons. Well, of course he has. And basically it goes on to say that on the morning Trump was elected, this guy cried, oh, boo-hoo, he cried his eyes out. Now he's going to get his revenge by launching this Trump balloon near the Houses of Parliament. Goes on to basically say that they are justifying this. They're saying that the motive behind this is because they're fighting back against the establishment. So a project initiated by a super rich member of a political family in London that lives in a cushy townhouse in Hammersmith, £2 million, a project approved by the mayor of London, that's anti-establishment, is it? No, it isn't. That's ridiculous. It's another Corbynista, upper middle class bourgeoisie pretending to be anti-establishment, pretending to be working class when they're not. This is what we see over and over again. And now we have on the line Yanni Brewer, who is the man behind the response to this, which is the Sadiq Khan baby balloon, which he intends to fly at some point over London over the next few weeks. It raised over $50,000 now, over £40,000 in basically less than a week. And as I said earlier, they raised more money in significantly less time than the Trump baby balloon, with virtually zero media coverage. An absolutely fantastic effort. They beat them. They're still not getting the recognition they deserve. But Yanni Brewer, welcome to the show.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Now, first, I just want to ask you about what inspired you to start this project, and going beyond just flying the balloon, what's the ultimate plan for this project?
Yeah, so I mean, in the project, the reason for doing this, I mean, was I was really annoyed at Khan's willingness to insult the most powerful man in the Western world, Donald Trump. You know, he's a friend of Britain, he's half British himself, and we need those kind of friends after Brexit. So I was really irritated by it, and the fact that Sadiq Khan thinks that he can say that Donald Trump isn't welcome, or the President of the United States, a great ally of ours, isn't welcome to London or to the UK on our behalf when he's not elected to represent us is really frustrating and irritating. So I wanted to address the serious issue of free speech as well in a light-hearted way. And I thought the best way to do that would be a tit-for-tat move and see if Sadiq Khan is willing to have a giant blimp of himself, caricature of himself, and permit his own insulting mockery in the name of free speech. And moving now, beyond... Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and beyond this, you know, I think everyone's had enough of Sadiq Khan in terms of the crime and him trying to talk on our behalf. And like you said, what's the bigger reason behind it? The bigger reason is to try and remove Khan from office. He's clearly not fit to be mayor. We've seen that with the soaring crime rates in London and his failure and unwillingness to address those serious issues.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you plan to have some kind of event. I don't know how much you want to get into this, but you plan on having some kind of event which draws attention to the massive violent crime problems we've been having in London. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the idea is to synchronize the baby Khan balloon, blimp, and have it airborne at this event. The event will be Make London Safe Again, sorry. It'll be sometime in August. We're kind of working on the exact details of it, but it'll be sometime in August with the aim of trying to make London safe again. And of course, you know, London can't be safe with Sadiq Khan as mayor.
Now, let's talk about the media attention, because as I mentioned earlier, you made more money in less time than the Trump baby balloon, despite the fact that they basically had a week or more of sustained intense media coverage. How interested has the mainstream media been in your project?
Yeah, so we went live on Thursday. Today's Tuesday, so 5 days. We've made 40,000. I think the Trump balloon has made about 27,000 in over a month. So it has been quite astonishing, really. The mainstream media, after you got involved, I had a couple of messages from a few people. Yesterday and today, it's picked up a little bit. On the Victoria Derbyshire show tomorrow at the BBC. The Sun have contacted me. I think the I newspaper in the UK have done a piece. But it's obviously nowhere near as much as the baby Trump balloon.
So it was only after you started making serious money and getting this funded that they actually had to pay attention to it. You've got more money in 3 days than they got in 30 days. Absolutely monumental effort. But, you know, with this Trump visit, we've had, I've spoken to people in UKIP and others who've said, you know, they've tried to have Trump welcoming street parties or celebrations, not even protests. They're being told no by the police. Obviously, the police have authorized these giant protests to take place on Friday. Sadiq Khan has authorized the blimp to go up on Friday. Would he have approved a giant inflatable black Barack Obama baby blimp flying over Parliament? This is the question. And has he already approved your balloon, or is that still in the works?
That's still in the works. And no, of course he wouldn't have approved a baby Obama, would he? It just wouldn't have happened. I saw that today he was on the, Great Morning Britain show or something with Piers Morgan. And Piers Morgan asked him, he said, you know, if someone makes a baby blimp of you or you as a pig caricature, would you be willing to fly? And he said, if it's a safe and peaceful demonstration, then yes. So based on that, you know, I don't see any reason why it won't go ahead. And I think he's kind of pigeonholed himself a little bit in terms of his maneuvers now.
So he's basically backed himself into a corner. What exactly is this blimp going to look like? Is it just going to be Sadiq in a nappy, or are you going to incorporate some kind of pig design into it now that they've mentioned that?
It's currently with an illustration artist, an illustrator. So we're going to work on a couple of different designs, see what's best. But, you know, it's got to capture the horrible features of Sadiq, you know, the horrible hook nose, the bags under the eyes, and it's going to be pretty gruesome.
We'll see how triggered he gets, because that was my response when I first read about the Trump balloon. You know, a lot of people on the right said, oh, this is a disgrace, this is insulting the president, which it is, but that's kind of not the reaction you have, because then you get called a snowflake. They say you're triggered. Obviously, they're too dim-witted to think up their own insults, so they just use our insults against us. But your response is exactly right. You take that and you turn it back on them. Then you make him look like an absolute hypocrite if he doesn't authorize this. So I'm guessing that was your response. The response wasn't to get offended by the Trump baby balloon. It was to respond in the way you did, which was to use the exact same stunt against them, right?
Exactly, yeah. So I thought, okay, if you want to play that game, you know, two can play that game. But this time you're going to have to prove yourself in having a big, massive 30-foot blimp of yourself flying over London. And we'll see how nice that is. See if you're willing to submit yourself to the same public humiliation you are so easily to Donald Trump.
Now, we're going to come back after the break and talk more about this. Talk about the sheer hypocrisy in Khan having nothing to say about, you know, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia visiting the Islamist dictator Erdogan. Just want to read some stats, though, about London crime under Sadiq Khan since he came to power as mayor. Knife attacks have soared by 21%, shooting incidents by 23%, street robberies by 33%, motorbike robberies by 50%, and murders by 40%. In February and March, London had more murders. It exceeded the murder rate of New York. This is a giant problem. His previous excuse was to say, oh, but we did a report about that last month. And basically, it's getting worse and worse and worse. The police are being given fewer and fewer powers to actually chase these moped criminals, for example. They're trying to turn it round right now simply because of the massive public backlash. But again, these figures seem to be getting worse and worse. That's what you're going to be drawing attention to with this Sadiq Khan baby balloon. And it's going to be very intriguing how they respond to it. But we're going to talk about it more after the break on the Alex Jones Show Live, 4th hour, Infowars.com. Don't go away. We are back live and we're talking to Yanni Brouwer about the Sadiq Khan baby inflatable balloon that he plans to fly over London next month. We're talking about the Trump baby balloon, which is set to fly over London this Friday. Now, just looking at some of the recent visitors to London, let's take a look at this shortlist. Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. This is a guy who's presiding over war crimes in Yemen. He's presiding over the persecution of gays and women in Saudi Arabia. Who protested his visit to London? Barely anybody. Let's look at the Islamist dictator President Erdogan of Turkey. You know, a guy who locks up journalists, a guy who tortures people, a guy who has his own goons beat people up in the United States. Who protested his visit? Barely anybody. Let's look at what's happening in Iran. Women are literally being tortured and imprisoned for removing their hijabs. There was another famous case of that happened this week. Where are the feminists? Where are the marchers on the Iranian embassies? They're not happening. Sadiq Khan said nothing about any of that. Nobody really protested it. Oh, but Donald Trump said, grab them by the pussy 13 years ago, and we're expecting 100,000 people out on the streets. Absolutely absurd, the level to which people allow themselves to be manipulated by fake moral outrage, fake hysteria. You know, Yanni, how many of these people are going to be out protesting this weekend because they feel a genuine moral urge to do so? And how many of them are going to be doing it, you know, for an Instagram selfie because they're vapid, virtue-signaling morons?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the anti-Trump thing, I think people are anti-Trump to be anti-Trump, aren't they? I don't think there's no real substance to any of it. Otherwise, they'd be out there, you know, campaigning against, like, the people you just mentioned. So a lot of it is to do with popularity. It's really popular. It's really cool to be anti-Trump. And if you're not anti-Trump, then you're uncool and basically you're silenced and you can't say that you're pro-Trump or anything. So a lot of it is just it's bullshit, isn't it, really?
That's exactly the word for it. It's also, there's no Glastonbury this year, so they can't all shout for Jeremy Corbyn, so they're probably missing that. Let me read you this quote from the Trump baby balloon activist, your arch nemesis. He said, quote, "What could have been a day of infamy for Britain," he's talking about the visit of Trump, "instead becomes a day of national pride and unity." So he thinks he's literally going to create national pride and unity by flying this 20-foot Trump baby balloon. Yanni, how much unity do you think those people would exhibit in that crowd if you attended their protest wearing a red MAGA hat? Do you think they'd be very, very forgiving and very unifying in that situation?
No, I'm sure it would be the same as being, you know, fed to a pack of wolves if I was there wearing a Make America Great Again hat. So it's all kind of double standard, isn't it? It's completely double standards. What they say they tolerate and this kind of thing, they don't. It's the complete opposite. It's actually the people who are more pro-Trump on the right are the ones who are more tolerant.
It's incredible. Also, now this is not to advocate any illegal activity whatsoever. We obviously don't do that. But anybody who's been reading 4chan over the past few days knows that they've located where this Trump baby balloon is. As with past 4chan events, specifically with Shia LaBeouf and everything that happened with him, they're talking about bringing this inflatable balloon down. Do you see that happening? Do you think that's on the horizon, given how much chatter there is on 4chan about it?
I haven't seen the chatter on 4chan personally, but you know, it would be good to see if it did come down. It'd be nice to see. I'm not, you know, like you said, advocating that, but I think people underestimate just how irritating this event is, just how irritating this balloon is. And people underestimate it, and they think that everyone's anti-Trump in the UK, and it's not the case. It's just not the case. So you could well see it come down. You could see you know, a counter-protest of some sort. But these people are so blinded, you know, these people in London, these anti-Trump, sorry, they're so blinded by themselves that they don't see anything else. They don't see that there is actually support for Donald Trump in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it's really annoying when they claim to speak for everyone in the UK by being so intolerant of his visit while claiming that they're the tolerant ones. I mean, you had France. France basically got a jump on us. Again, the population of France, I imagine, are no great fans of Donald Trump in any large majority. It's probably the same as in the UK. But they got a jump on everyone. They arranged I think it was a state visit or the equivalent of, before anyone else. There were no giant protests, obviously a few, no giant protests. It worked out well for both countries. You know, they could get over their little butthurt and just acknowledge the fact that even if you don't like the president, you have to respect the office. And to ostracize the president, that's only going to harm our interests, as he said, when we need this Brexit deal, if even, you know, Brexit happens at all at this point. But just in closing, Yanni, tell people how they can support the funding and the organization of this Sadiq Khan baby balloon event.
Yeah, so we're still on crowdfunding. We've got until the 9th of August. So we've been going 5 days. We've got £40,000. So it's a long way to go, 9th of August, for the funding. So the bigger the donations, the bigger the amount we raise, the bigger the balloon, the bigger the event. The more we can do on the day to help make London safe again. And if you want to get involved, you can contact myself on Twitter, or there'll be a few other details as well in the next coming days of who else to contact in regards to that. But yeah, keep the money coming in, and then, you know, the more we raise, the bigger this event can be, and the more pressure we can put on Sadiq Khan.
Definitely. So people have got a few weeks to keep that money rolling in. You can stage a bigger and bigger event the more money you get, and basically have a real response to these people who claim to represent those in the UK. They don't. You've proven that by outraising them in a matter of days. It took them a month to make, what, £27,000? You made that in just over 3 days. Absolutely monumental effort. The real fight back begins. We will have our voice just as they have theirs, and we'll continue to monitor it. Yanni Brouwer, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
There goes Yanni Brouwer with the Sadiq Khan baby balloon protest. Be sure to go and find that and donate. It will be in the description when this video goes up on YouTube. Let's cover a few final news stories, but before that, I want to direct your attention to these 4th of July super sale specials, because we've extended them, obviously. Massive discounts on a huge laundry list of products over at InfoWarsStore.com, including Brain Force Plus at 50% off, Survival Shield X2 40% off, and by the way, this is all free shipping. We've got the Knockout Sleep Support, which is still available at $17.76 with free shipping while supplies last. And as I said, a laundry list of other products: DNA Force Plus, the Real Red Pill Plus, Super Female Vitality, all Super Blue products at 50% off, and InfoWars Life Select Storable Food, 3-month supply, 50% off, all with free shipping. Go and check out the 5-star independent certified reviews and get the products. Support this network right now by shopping at InfoWarsStore.com. Now, talking about that Trump visit, this is a headline out of Zero Hedge. Americans in UK urged to keep low profile during Trump visit. So our conservative and name-only government is so petrified of what might happen from these virtue-signaling lefty Corbynista middle-class idiots that all live in £2 million plush pads in West London, that they're now telling Americans living in London or Americans visiting London to keep a low profile during President Trump's visit later this week following the NATO summit. It says this is a warning. This is the official warning from the US Embassy in London. Numerous demonstrations are being planned for July 12 to 14 surrounding the visit of the President of the United States. Trump will hold talks with Theresa May. And again, he's not even going to be anywhere near London, but they're telling Americans in London to be visible, to keep a low profile, because protests may turn violent. They're literally telling people to keep a low profile as American tourists, Americans living in London. Why would they need to do that? Are they telling them not to wear red MAGA hats? Is that it? Do we not want to trigger the tolerant liberals at this point? Is that what they're afraid of? Again, just absolute cowardly behavior from front to back with this government right now, which has betrayed Brexit. And on that subject, Breitbart headline, Trump backs Boris Johnson's Brexit rebellion. President Trump has poured petrol onto the flames of UK Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit crisis by coming out for her chief opponent, Boris Johnson. So he gave these comments earlier today. He said, Boris Johnson's a friend of mine. He's been very, very nice to me, very supportive. Of course, Trump sees his own legacy as being deeply embedded in the Brexit vote, which happened, about 5 months before he became president, or at least was elected president. So Trump sees his legacy in the legacy of Brexit. He wants to keep Brexit alive. Brexit has been completely betrayed by our conservative and name-only government over the past few days. Even with all these resignations, it looks like Theresa May is going to keep her job. The Remainers in Parliament are dancing a jig. They're over the moon with this crappy deal, which isn't Brexit at all. And really, we're facing dark times in the UK. Is the UK at the point of no longer being a functioning democracy, given that they're basically ignoring the results of a national referendum? Harrowing times indeed. That's going to wrap it up for the show. War Room is coming up next. Infowars.com. Stay right there.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
You're a white male! You're a white man!
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
InfoWars comes to mind. Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. Alex Jones.
There's a lot of controversy around this network about Alex Jones.
Google is being accused of hiding negative stories about Hillary and her campaign by changing its algorithm to bury stories like the Clinton body count story. That's according to website InfoWars.
It sounds like it's confirmed there are at least 2 shooters with fully automatic weapons.
Dr. Martin Luther King has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
JFK was shot from the back and the front.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
They took the babies out of incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
I think this is a national security imperative. We have clear things that we do not understand how they work, operating in areas that we can't control. UFOs.
Is this global governance at last? Is it one world? The central bank is in charge.
Israel claims the attack was accidental, but some former U.S. naval officers say it was on purpose. They describe the day's action as part of a continuing cover-up.
Russian intelligence compiled a dossier on Mr. Trump during visits to Moscow.
Russian scum!
Denied everything. He called it all fake news.
And he accused CNN of being fake news.
This is a national emergency.
If they kill Trump or remove Trump, it will cause a massive civil war in this country.
This was a FEMA high-level alert.
We are at war with Russia.
Are you aware that Mr. Stone also stated publicly that he was in direct communication with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks?
The White House and the President are citing InfoWars.
They could shut us down. You're next.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance. It's Alex Jones.
Extendowise, the latest product from InfoWarsLife.com, fuses all the known compounds that have been proven to be good for our hearts and cardiovascular system. And listen, everybody's got a heart. Well, actually, maybe Hillary and George Soros don't, but everybody else has a heart, and this product is amazing. So, if you have a heart and you want the very best product out there that's designed to aid a healthy heart and cardiovascular system, it's Extendowise, available at InfoWarsLife.com. And like all of our products are game changers, this baby is the most souped up, awesome version the top formulators could come up with and still be affordable. It's one of the very best heart pills out there. It's Extendowise. So get some for yourself and family and friends. It's got the very best fish oil from the fjords. It's very, very pure, very, very clean, and has the EPA type that is specifically good for the heart, cardiovascular system. It's got the properly formulated type of CoQ10 and more. It is Extendowise, now available at InfoWarsLife.com.